Welcome back to the FPL deadline stream, this time out of Gameweek 12. We are back after the final international break of 2025, and there's a lot to get into in terms of injury updates, team news, and building upon what I discussed in my Predicted Lineups podcast yesterday. And for those that wanted wildcard and free hit squads, I also talked about both of them across all of my content this week. The free hit was actually shown in my team selection podcast alongside an updated wildcard draft. But what you can see here is my starting 11 at the moment. I've only made one transfer, and that's Gabriel out to Virgil van Dijk, and that happened before the price changes yesterday, where Gabriel went down to 6.5 million and Virgil van Dijk went up to 6 million. And even the wild card isn't completely ruled out, but I think Gameweek 13 is a little bit more likely and it could be a better time. Now, it is obviously team dependent, and for some people, a Gameweek 12 wildcard solves a lot of problems like Dan Burn being suspended. You might have Reinders stinking out the gaff, and to be fair, I've got both of them. Antoine Semenyo is yellow flagged, so you might want to look elsewhere. It also allows you to bring in Brian Mbeumo, Igor Thiago, Jean-Philippe Mateta. So there is definitely a lot of merit to using the wildcard right now. And the same goes for Gameweek 13 as well, of course. And there's also the free hit to factor in. And a lot of people would be tempted to use that chip in Gameweek 13 as well. So throughout the course of this stream, I'll be answering all your questions, covering the top 10 captains, clean sheet odds, all the graphic stats that you need for the upcoming deadline, and also talking about those specific chips because they're so important for the first half of the campaign. Make sure to use every single booster before Gameweek 20, otherwise you'll be using your second chip for the season. So let's start off with the first question, which is by Josh 10. I'm messaging 8 hours in advance because I'm doing my team and I'm stuck. Who would you bench out of Thiago, Pedro, Haaland, Sarr, Semenyo, Ndai, Sarr, Caicedo, and Saka? From those players, it's between Ndai and Caicedo to bench, in my opinion. There's also a chance that several Chelsea players are rested, and Caicedo is one of them. This might seem a bit left field, but if it was me, I'd probably bench Caicedo. I wouldn't be too adverse of, or against benching Ndai. Everton have a poor record against Man United, but yeah, for the rest, they definitely start. I mean, Saka and Haaland should not be in this debate, in my opinion. And even Joao Pedro against Burnley, a bit of rotation risk there. But yeah, I think it's quite clear that those two, Ndai and Caicedo, are the ones to bench. And if I had to pick one, it's probably Caicedo right now. Cylinder says, hey Dylan, hope you're doing well. No more international break till March. The best part of the season begins. Yeah, that's debatable. I'm thinking of playing the bench boost. Thoughts on my bench currently is Dubravka, Senesi, Xhaka, and Mukiele. It's decent. I think it could do the job. I mean, I've had some horrendous benches over the last couple of weeks. I mean, in Gameweek 11, I got 2 points from my 4 players on my bench. So, yeah, it has not really performed for the last month or two. But in terms of the players you've got, it looks okay. I wouldn't expect much from Xhaka and Dubravka personally. And even with Mukiele, I think there's probably a blank in there. But Senesi, with one return, maybe Defcon could single-handedly carry your bench boost. So I'm not completely against benching this week or bench boosting. But to be honest, it's such an overrated chip. And yeah, if you can get 15 plus points, especially in a single gimmick, you're very happy with that. Even 10 would be a relative success. With free transfers, I'm planning to sell Gabriel to Van Dijk and use the other transfer to sell Semenyo, who is a doubt, to Cunha or Minter, or sell Mukiele to one of O'Reilly, Van Heck, Villa, United defenders. I'd rather sell Mukiele in this instance, but it also depends on the rest of your squad, because if you've also got another 4 million defender, then yeah, I would highly recommend upgrading one of those sort of really budget defenders and having more defensive depth, which is very useful throughout the Christmas period. But otherwise, yeah, with Semenyo, I don't really blame you for wanting to make a move, but because you're not going to Mbeumo and both Cunha and Minter, I think Minter's been a decent FPL asset to be fair, but Cunha, not so much. I wouldn't be too keen on making that transfer to Cunha personally. If anything, yeah, Minter's the one out of those two, but it all depends on your squad. I don't know if you've got another 4 million defender or not. If that's the case, I would sell Mukiele, and O'Reilly looks the most interesting at the moment. Even Villa defenders like Cash, who is yellow flagged, and maybe Dean could be okay for the next couple. But Aston Villa also are more solid in difficult fixtures compared to those appealing games on paper. But yeah, definitely something to think about. But I would sell Mukiele depending on the rest of your squad. So thank you to Anish. Hey Dylan. Raya, Chalobah, Van Dijk, Richards, Semenyo, Sarr, Caicedo, Mbeumo, Joao Pedro, Mateta, captain, okay, Haaland, Dubravka, Eze, Senesi, Goodmanson, 1 free transfer, 1.9 million in the bank. So your defensive line looks quite stacked this week. You've got the Arsenal defensive coverage with Raya. You've also got that Palace defender in Richards. Van Dijk looks solid for the next 3 fixtures, which is why I've brought him in. And Chalobah should do okay against Burnley away. So I like that defensive line. As for the rest of your squad, my main concern would be Caicedo. There is the element of rotation there, and ultimately he's a 6.1 million midfielder, so he is still worth having in the long term. But if I were to have any concerns, also Semenyo with the yellow flag. Otherwise, I think he'd be looking very promising this week. But I would be tempted to start Eze over Caicedo. That would be a personal take of mine. You've also got Senesi on the bench, so look, if you got the bench boost, I would actually be tempted to use it, even though I'm not that keen on Goodmanson. Against Aston Villa, I think Leeds will concede. Dubravka doesn't look great, but both Senesi and Eze, or even Caicedo, if you bring him to the bench, I think that could look really solid as a bench boost. But you've probably used the chip by this stage. With one free transfer, 1.9 in the bank, I would roll. I don't think you need to make another move necessarily, but just a few concerns about the midfield, but it's still a decent bench boost team overall. I think Kruppi will start. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, he has been in great form recently, but if Anderson is still first choice, he's got a lot of credit in the bank for Iriola and Bournemouth in general. Play Pope or Dubravka. Well, both will concede. That's for sure. I would probably go for Dubravka. If there was an upset, I mean, Newcastle are solid at home, but I think it's more likely that Burnley gets something against Chelsea than Newcastle against City, although that's certainly debatable. I think people would disagree with that, but that's the way I feel. So yeah, welcome Anish once again. Thank you for the super chat. Are you certain that Hincapié will be Gabriel's replacement for the foreseeable future? Not certain, but he's the most likely and natural replacement for Gabriel. Haaland, 99 Prem goals, 100 against Newcastle feels inevitable, no? Against anybody, it seems like it's inevitable. Even if he was playing Arsenal this weekend or Liverpool, you would back him to do that. So yeah, I think Haaland will score. It's kind of unfortunate that he's the only premium that really offers that consistency, and until that changes, the captaincy will be very boring in FPL this season. As an Arsenal fan, I think we are going to crush Spurs 4-0. I hope you're right. I don't think it'll be that easy, though. Tottenham Hotspur have the best away record this season in the Premier League, and there's a good reason for that. It might sound strange, but I would maybe be a bit more confident if the game was played at their stadium. But yeah, Arsenal typically win against Tottenham at the Emirates, but football's a funny game. Things can change very quickly, and Thomas Frank is a good manager. Start Semenyo or Caicedo? I'd start Semenyo. Bench one of Neto, Minter, and Thiago. Reluctantly, I would bench Minter. I think he's a decent FPL asset, though. Let's whiz through these and catch up to the recent chats, but yeah, there's a lot to get through. Surendra also says, or just leave the team as it is and sell Gabriel to Van Dijk, play the bench boost, and save the other 2 free transfers. I don't know the rest of your squad for me to say if you should bench boost or not. Obviously, I saw your bench, or the proposed bench you've got, but yeah, Gabriel to Van Dijk looks solid. I'm fine with that. You don't need to make the other moves necessarily this week. Yeah, I would just go to Van Dijk. Yeah, thank you, Easy, and welcome as well. A chaotic deadline, we'll see. Definitely use your fantasy on Tuesday. That's going to be chaotic for many reasons. With the rumours of Semenyo to Liverpool in January, what would change in your FPL perspective? Well, Semenyo would be a little bit less appealing because he wouldn't be the talisman for Liverpool as he would be for Bournemouth, but there are a lot of rumours going around. He was linked to Newcastle and Tottenham over the summer. He's been linked to Arsenal. He's a boyhood Arsenal fan, so I think this saga will drag on and on. There's no guarantee he leaves in January, and from my perspective, I think he'll leave next summer, not in the January transfer window. But Liverpool would be in pole position, in my opinion, but they've also got a lot of fires and issues to deal with in terms of their midfield and defensive line. I think centre-back is a priority for them. Will you wildcard this week or next week? So at the moment, I'll probably wildcard next week, but that is still up in the air because I've also got the free hit, which looks quite solid on paper for game week 13. How many players are red flagged and yellow flagged? I haven't counted, to be quite honest with you. Sell Joao Pedro for Thiago? Maybe not this week. The time to do that is game week 13. What top 5 player percentages owners under 10% under the radar should we buy until the next international break? I'll have to think about that and give you an answer later on. Otherwise, I would just kind of be forcing it and maybe saying some random players who don't deserve the attention. Would you do Voltemada to Joao Pedro for 1 week only before wildcard? I'm not completely against that, but I also talked about Voltemada being a decent option against Man City. If Newcastle were to score a goal or two, I think Voltemada is the most likely to be involved, but his ceiling isn't particularly high. He did score 3 goals for Germany over the international break, but Man City is a different kettle of fish. Amram says Mbumo, Amad Diallo and Mazraoui could be released 2 weeks before AFCON. Yeah, well, a lot of these nations will be putting pressure on the Premier League clubs to get these players in early so they can train with them and build some rapport and chemistry, because AFCON is very important to them. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting saga, but I think with these United players, I mean, they'll do everything possible, Man United, to keep them for Game Week 16 and 17, but there's no guarantee that will happen. Should we sell these AFCON players before the AFCON transfers in Game Week 16? Not necessarily. Just wait until we get more information and, confirmation about when these players will leave for their countries. But yeah, the likes of Mbuma, for example, you're not going to sell him in Game Week 14 or 15 just because there are rumours he could be released 2 weeks earlier. Good game week as well, Lager, and good morning. Same with FPL Kevy. We made it. International break had some fun games, to be fair, but glad to be back. Yeah, it was quite interesting this time round. I'll be honest, I kind of disconnected from the European qualifiers, even though there were some great stories in there, like the Republic of Ireland and Scotland. Sam says, made 1 free transfer, Gabriel to Truffert, making space for Saka next game week. Already have Calafiori, Lacroix and Virgil. Yeah, looks solid. Should I do 1 to 2 free transfers more, taking a -4 or -8? Semenyo, Calafiori as a doubt, but really want Bowen out. Yeah, I think Bowen is the priority sell from those players. Calafiori should be available. That's what Fabrizio Romano reported over a week ago. As for Semenyo, that's a bit less clear, but I still think he'll start, as discussed in yesterday's transfer tips. Transfer tips, predicted lineups, I should say. But yeah, looks pretty good. I don't think you should take a -4 or -8, though, on paper. But then again, I don't know the context of the rest of your 50-man squad. I transferred out Enzo early and kind of regretted it. I've been saying this for a while, even from my Transfer Tips podcast early in the week, that I believe Enzo Fernandez will start and the injury isn't too serious. So I'm not completely surprised, and that's why sometimes, if possible, it's best to wait until making transfers, especially during an international break where anything can happen. Looking forward to seeing the Chelsea lineup. Wonder if Maresca does anything weird. Currently have Caicedo benched, which doesn't feel great. Well, it would make sense if they made a few changes because they've got Barcelona in a couple of days and then Arsenal over the weekend, and that would be the priority. Against Burnley, they could rotate a little bit and still get the job done, but it might cause them to have more trouble than they would like. Thank you, Awale, and welcome back as well after the international break, the final one of 2025. Hi, Dylan. Semenyo to Bruno or Enzo to Cunha, or just roll? If I had to pick one, it's probably Semenyo to Bruno, but I don't think you need to make that transfer personally because I think Semenyo will start. Just my opinion. You got to back your gut on that one. Good morning, Joshua. Mateta captainers rise up. Today we feast. Yeah, I do like Mateta as a captaincy option. He's in my top 5, but not in my FPL team, and that's something that will change over the next week or so. But yeah, if I decided to make a late wildcard now, Mateta would be one of the first names on the team sheet, that's for sure. Hamza says if I do Indai to Cunha, then I have 5.7 million for a defender instead of Gabriel. So who would you buy? Already have Timber, Munoz, Triple Palace and Senesi. Yeah, difficult one. There aren't many standouts, to be fair. But I would consider a Villa defender like Cash or Luka Dean. Just bear in mind the former is yellow flagged. But yeah, there aren't too many. My favourite Gabriel replacements are Virgil van Dijk, Munoz or any Palace defender. But you just don't have the funds for Van Dijk. He would be the standout, but you need 0.3 million more. Dubravka, DCL, Rodon, Anderson is bench boostable. It's okay. I'm not entirely convinced though. I mean, Calvert-Lewin, I just don't really like as an FPL asset. It has been a few years since I rated him in that regard. Free hit 13 or 16, pros and cons, please. I'd have to break that down in more detail using the website fpl.team. Maybe I'll do that later on when I go through different screens. But I do like the Game Week 13 free hit for several reasons, like tripling up on Man City against Sunderland. And you can also have plenty of Liverpool coverage when they've got a good fixture on paper. So yeah, out of the two, if I had to kind of pick one right now, it's probably 13, but it's kind of awkward for those with the wildcard as well, because if you're not wildcarding this week, you'd probably look at Game Week 13, but then that ruins the Game Week 13 free hit opportunity, which is one of the main reasons why, if I do end up making a late wildcard, it will probably be to facilitate that free hit in 13. But yeah, that'll be discussed later on. Play Anderson or Senesi? Senesi. Play O'Reilly or Senesi? I'd go for Senesi here. Hey Dylan, please choose one. Kudus, Rodon, Van der Ven, and second. Well, in that case, just leave one out. I mean, Van der Ven has threat from set pieces, but I think he'll concede a goal or two, minimum. I would say leave out Van der Ven, but he has been one of the best defenders in FPL this season so far. Do you think Krippy will start this week? Thinking of bringing him in on a bench boost and have him as a dead spot? Well, I've got Evanilson in my predicted 11. It's not an absolute guarantee, but I think Evanilson will get the nod. Probably going to do Semenyo and Enzo to Bruno and Mbumo. It's just worth saying that both Semenyo and Enzo could start this weekend, and Enzo Fernandez has been cleared. He's no longer yellow flagged. Gabriel to Van Dijk or Gvardiol? Still Van Dijk for me. Gvardiol is decent, and he has been quite solid overall in UCL Fantasy and FPL, but yeah, it's probably going to be Van Dijk for me. Semenyo, Munoz, James, Caicedo, Senesi, sub 1. Probably Caicedo. Yeah, Villa differential. I'd say Matty Cash or Luka Dean. Minter or Sarr this game and onwards? I like both of them. I have a slight preference for Sarr in isolation, but I'm also quite conscious of tripling up on Palace, especially going into December where they've got such a congested schedule and they could rotate, you know, which is something they haven't really done under Oliver Glasner. But yeah, it would be Sarr in isolation. Is Cunha over Bruno a big downgrade? Well, based on what we've seen so far this season, probably yes. That could well change in the coming months, but yeah, Mbumo's the best United player in FPL right now. Bruno Fernandes is second, and I think Cunha is arguably not in the top 3 right now, but of course, football's a funny game. Morning, Dylan. I have 2 free transfers, and my team is Sanchez, Gabriel, Senesi, Munoz, Semenyo, Bruno Fernandes, Roger, Szoboszlai, Enzo, Haaland, and Mateta. Yeah, looks solid. Just bear in mind, Szoboszlai is on the tightrope. 1 more yellow card, and he will be suspended for a Premier League match before Liverpool have played their 19th game. But I don't really see too many fires to put out, except for Gabriel, of course. He's the one that you would have to sell. I don't know what money you've got in the bank, but Virgil van Dijk would be a solid replacement, in my opinion. What's the stats on Gabriel and Semenyo? Well, I covered both of them in my transfer tips, also my predicted lineups yesterday. Gabriel's out for the next couple of weeks. That was confirmed by Arteta yesterday. And Antoine Semenyo hasn't really been... Let's just say Iraola didn't provide clarity on that situation, but I think he'll start. But obviously Gabriel will miss the next month or two. Chelsea differential. Probably Reece James still. Just for a 1-week punt or something like that. Yeah, this question was covered. Play Pope or Dubravka. Thank you very much. Dylan, should I take a -4 to replace Semenyo or hold? I'd probably hold him, especially if you've got squad depth. Best midfielder for 6.1 million and under, not including Minter. Well, Xhaka, just for DEFCON and consistency. I think Caicedo still enters the equation, but I would have some concerns about him this week. I think those two are the standouts. Yeah, best Gabriel replacement, as highlighted earlier, is between Virgil van Dijk, Daniel Munoz, even other Palace defenders like Gay and Richards would be quite solid. Marcus Senesi, those are the main ones I'd look at. And of course, Jurriën Timber, if you've got no Arsenal defensive coverage. Calafiori or Reece James, who should I start? I'd go for Reece James, even though there is an element of risk rotation there. Gameweek 12 wildcard says Baban, Petrovic, Dubravka, Saliba, Virgil, Senesi, Richards, Estev, Saka, Bruno, Mbumo, Gakpo, Minter, Haaland, Mateta, Guiu. I don't like Guiu, to be honest, and Estev. You've already got Dubravka to cover Burnley defensively, and I do recognise he's just your backup goalkeeper, but because if you've got Petrovic, I think you would be more inclined to start Dubravka on the odd occasion compared to if you had Donnarumma or Raya as your main option. So I would change Estev to a Sunderland defender if possible. I do like the structure of your defence, and Saliba would be one of the safer Arsenal picks defensively. Having said that, I still prefer Timber, to be quite honest with you. He offers more bonus points potential, DEFCON, and attacking threat. With your midfield, I like all of the picks except for Gakpo, who should start this weekend, especially with Wirtz missing the next game or two. But I just don't really like Gakpo too much. I think as a short-term pun that could work, but not longer term. And Guiu, I recognise that he's just there for you to fund Saka, Bruno and Boomer at the same time, but I think Guiu to Thiago and then Bruno downgraded to a cheaper midfielder like Sarr, Enzo Fernandez or Rice would be better. Using my free hit chip, Thiago or Joao Pedro, I would go for Joao Pedro. Timber or Konate? Long term is still Timber. For this week, it might be a different story. I think Liverpool have a better chance of a clean sheet, but the odds would say otherwise. Yeah, long term is Timber all day long. So thank you to Paredes, even though they changed your name on YouTube, as we talked about over the last couple of streams. So to Heated Gaming, MacFree Ronan, Linus J, Harrison James, and Tanaru. Enjoy membership for an entire month, and you're going to get a lot of content for FPL News Your Fantasy before anybody else does. Prior to comments as well in streams and videos. So there's a lot of perks there to signing up, and you just got it for free for an entire month, and you can see how it is to be a member of the channel. So big up there to Paredes as usual for all the great work he has done for the channel. And speaking of which, I will have a look at those member questions specifically. If I do see them, you will be answered first, and then I'll answer the rest in order of submission. Ahmed says, hi, Dylan, good morning. What do you think in Dieter Rodgers and best captain, Mateta, Haaland, Pedro? You'll see my captaincy list again very soon, but with the first question, I would keep in Die. I don't mind Rodgers with Aston Villa's fixtures, and I think Rodgers showed a bit of consistency over the last month or so, but he's not really providing massive returns. I think he was more appealing as an FPL asset last season, actually. So in Die would be the preference. And for the captaincy, unfortunately, Haaland is number one. But from the others you mentioned, I think Mateta would be the best one to give him a run for his money. I think Joao Pedro is 6th in my list. Mateta's 5th. You will see the full list very soon, actually. And it's probably worth going through in just a minute. I took Gabriel out and punting on Cucurella. Slight risk, but I'm okay with it. We'll free hit the Gameweek 13 Arsenal Chelsea fixture. Yeah, that looks quite solid. I mean, even the wildcard in 13 for me isn't locked in. I might free hit as well. And this will be talked about in my upcoming team selection podcast. But yeah, I look at my squad this week, and I don't think it has to be wildcarded because, yeah, I think having an extra week or two of information, especially considering teams like Arsenal with 3 really tough games in a week, I think that could give us a lot of insight, seeing how they line up and fare against Tottenham and Bayern Munich. But yeah, I think Gameweek 13 free hit looks very solid. Look, Caicedo was in my predicted lineup, but there is a chance of rotation for all these Chelsea players. Just bear that in mind. Jar says, Dubravka, Petrovic, Van der Ven, Senesi, Timber, Bruno, Saka, Sarr, Semenyo, Voltemada, Haaland, Thiago, Dewsbury Hall, Rodon, Estev. Should I wildcard or free hit or anything else? Okay, so you've got a good squad overall, in my opinion. You would change Voltemada to Mateta. You would probably get Mbuma in the midfield, sell Semenyo and or Bruno. I don't think Sarr and Saka are necessarily sells, especially in the case of Saka. Defensively, I think you're quite well set, but even Van der Ven and I'd say one of your 4 million defenders, ideally Estev, they would make way. Yeah, it's an interesting question, actually. I don't think it's a clear-cut one, but I think long-term it's probably best to wildcard, make 6-7 changes minimum, and you could arguably keep your, the same goalkeepers. I think Petrovic, Dubravka will be quite popular on the wild card, but I'm still recommending Raya and possibly even Donnarumma as a main goalkeeper option. But yeah, I would probably change Dewsbury Hall, Estev, maybe Rodon, although that's not like a priority. Voltemada is good, but I think Mateta is a level above. And then make 1 or 2 changes in the midfield. So I'd probably wildcard this week and maybe free hit in Gameweek 13 in your situation. But if you decided to just use free transfers because you've got 2 in the bank, then yeah, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea either. But that would be my recommendation overall. Dubravka or Raya, I would go for Raya. Arsenal are top of the clean sheet odds, by the way. Thank you as well to Paredes again. Thank you for the content. Come on, you Gunners. Major week coming. Yeah, it's a massive week, and we'll see which players are available. Martin Odegaard seems the most likely right now to be in the squad. Arteta hinted that there could be other players returning, but he didn't want to give anything away, as usual. But yeah, the international break wasn't too kind for several teams like Bournemouth and Arsenal. So yeah, there's going to be a lot to contend with over the coming weeks. Yeah, all good, Tricks. What about you? Thank you very much. Yeah, Igor Thiago, I've been talking about this for over a month now, maybe even 2 or 3 months. I think Igor Thiago offers great value with 8 Premier League goals so far. He's on penalties, and he did go up in price overnight to 6.4 million, but he's still well worth it. Verbruggen or Raya? I mean, usually I'll just say Raya with no hesitation. I think there is a debate this week, but it's still probably going to be David Raya for me. I think Brentford will score. Next week, Arsenal playing Bayern and Chelsea. You must be really excited, no? I would be more excited if Arsenal had more players available. Yes, I just even going into the Sunderland game, I wasn't particularly maybe confidence not the word, but I wasn't particularly excited because Mourinho's going to start front. Usually he's better off the bench, and he's not really someone to start in a Premier League winning side, in my opinion. But yeah, I think those are big games. I'm quite looking forward to them, but a lot of Arsenal fans have discussed this, kind of possibly sacrificing the Bayern game to make sure that the wins are secured in the Prem. But ultimately, Arsenal would be trying to go for the win in every single match, and it's going to be difficult, but it is an exciting week on paper, and let's see if they rise to the challenge. Sell Bowen to Joao Pedro or roll? I'm free hitting in 13. I'd probably go for it, but Joao Pedro isn't someone I'd recommend long-term. The best 3 forwards are Haaland, Mateta, and Igor Thiago. I'd even rank Voltemada higher than Joao Pedro beyond Gameweek 12. Okay, so let's now go through some different screens, and then I'll go back to your questions. So let's talk about the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating until Gameweek 17, where Bournemouth are top, Fulham, Newcastle, Brighton, and Liverpool are in the top 5. Even Man City, United, Aston Villa are just behind them, and Crystal Palace are in mid-table with Arsenal in 10th and 11th. Looking at the bottom, West Ham, Sunderland, Everton, Spurs, and Leeds finish up the top, or should I say the bottom 5. And let's now go to predicted points. Haaland is number 1 again. Salah, Saka, Mateta, Bruno Fernandes, Raul Jimenez, Mbeumo, Amad Diallo, Cunha, and Szoboszlai are in the top 10. And with projected price changes, Szoboszlai, despite being on that suspension tightrope, he is projected to rise tonight. The same goes for Chris Richards, Ismaila Sarr, Truffert, and Casemiro. Interesting. He hasn't been too bad from an FPL perspective. So Bowen, Xavi Simons, Harrison, Diop, Hermanson, Adingra, Voltemada, Pickford, Nathaniel Klein, Beto, Wright, Pedro Porro, Bernardo Silva, Eric Bonham, Stack, and Wan-Bissaka could all go down, according to the website livefpl.net, which I'd highly recommend. You can also use it to visualize future game weeks. And let's see if anything has changed. So yes, Senesi, Petrovic, and Truffert have also been added to the potential price changes list over the last hour or so. Let's now go to a stats comparison of Salah and Mbeumo, 2 of the main captaincy options to rival Erling Haaland this week. And Mbeumo is actually leading. They both have 6 goal contributions, but Mbeumo has the edge with the extra goal. And their stats are actually identical. 26 shots for Mbeumo, 27 for Salah, but the Cameroonian has more shots on target. Shots in the box is quite similar, but Salah does lead there. The XG is also identical, 3.72 for Mohamed Salah and 3.25 for Mbeumo. The XA is in Mbeumo's favour. The same goes for, well, nothing else actually. They both have 7 big chances. Salah has 5 big chances created to Mbeumo's 4, and key passes is also very similar. But guess what? Mbeumo costs 8.6 million in FPL, and Salah is 14.2. So Mbeumo would be the pick from these two in the long term, but of course both of them will go off with their countries to the African Cup of Nations. So yeah, that will obviously change by Gameweek 16, where everyone gets 5 free transfers in FPL. Let me now show you another great website, FPL.team, to visualize future game weeks. And if I were to wildcard now, I'd go to something like this, with Raya and Dubravka as my goalkeepers, Senesi, Gay, and Virgil van Dijk, and also Saka, Ndai, Mbeumo, Enzo. I mean, a few of these picks aren't entirely nailed on. Even Ndai, for example, could become Declan Rice, maybe going to Ismaila Sarr. I'm just a bit wary of tripling up on Palace as mentioned earlier, but the front three is locked in. Mateta, Haaland and Thiago, and even over a month ago, I was talking about this as the sort of wildcard template before it even became such a popular thing. So Cash, Xhaka and Mukiele on the bench. It's not too shabby, but I don't see it as a massive upgrade compared to my team in Gameweek 12, but maybe you'll feel differently because of Jean-Philippe Mateta alone. And speaking of which, FPL Challenge, I am considering captaining Mateta, but at the moment I've gone for Mbeumo and a few of these players to target the challenge this week, which is called In Possession. So 6 points are allocated for players who achieve 90% pass completion, but they have to attempt at least 30 passes. That's why Nico Gonzalez and Rice are in my FPL Challenge setup. The same goes for Van Dijk, with Robert Sanchez, Mbeumo captain, and Mateta completing the rest of this squad. I'm also going to show you my team selection graphics very quickly so you can see how I did in the previous game week and also some of the transfer plans, the confirmed move I made of Gabriel to Virgil van Dijk, and this would be my team, of course, with just that one free transfer and not wildcarding or free hitting. Both of those chips are still available for me for the first half of the season, basically. So after this, I'll be showing you sort of a gimmick analysis with the clean sheet odds, top 10 captains, scoreline predictions, and after that, predicted lineups. And once all of that is done, I'll go back to your questions. But essentially, all of these graphics and all of these different assets and aspects of the game, they were covered in my team selection podcast, but they have been updated with all the latest information with prices and also the yellow and red flags. Gabriel, of course, will miss the next month. So that's why he is now red flagged in FPL. But unfortunately with Semenyo, we just don't know exactly if he's going to start or not. I think he will, but Iraola didn't give much away in his press conference. So this is my team selection for Game Week 12. Sanchez in goal against Burnley away. I think one of the main reasons why I'm not in a rush to wildcard is because I've got 2 Chelsea players against Burnley. But if they decide to rotate and play Jorgensen, they play Delap and Joao Pedro's bench, then yes, I'm not in a great position there. And I would regret not wildcarding because both of them would be offloaded on that provisional wildcard, and you can see the expected points courtesy of Fantasy Football Hub. So things have changed quite drastically, of course. Gabriel is now down at 0.0, but I sold him anyway to Virgil van Dijk, who is one of the recommended premiums to replace the Arsenal centre-back. So that kind of speaks for itself. I've now got 1 yellow flag in Semenyo, and Dan Burn is suspended. He will return in Game Week 13, but yeah, you look at the rest. Renildo is okay on my bench, but Reinders, I don't expect him to start, and he's not a good FPL asset. There is a reason why he went down in price to 5.4 million overnight. So let's now go to the scoreline predictions. You saw them in my Predicted Lineups podcast yesterday. I've gone for Burnley 1, Chelsea 3, Bournemouth 2, West Ham 1, Brighton 2, Brentford 2, Fulham 1, Sunderland 1, Liverpool 2, Nottingham Forest 0, Wolves 1, Crystal Palace 2, Newcastle 2, Man City 3, Leeds 1, Aston Villa 1, Arsenal 3, Tottenham Hotspur 1, and Man United 1, Everton 0 on Monday night. So this has been a bit of a jinx in recent weeks, and hopefully I jinxed this player because I'm not going to bring him in until our wildcard. So Everton is the team with a highlighted weakness on the right-hand side, and who plays there this weekend? None other than Brian Mbeumo, even though he occupied different positions against Tottenham Hotspur, including on the left-hand side in that 2-2 draw. But these are the clean sheet odds for Game Week 12. Arsenal are top yet again, despite facing Tottenham Hotspur at home. Chelsea, Liverpool, Fulham, Bournemouth and Crystal Palace complete the top 6. And Nottingham Forest are bottom. Tottenham Hotspur are second last, actually, for this week. Let me now show you the top 10 captains, which will be very interesting. Some people want to maybe challenge and tackle Erling Haaland directly for Game Week 12. Ekitike is 10th in my list, facing Nottingham Forest at home. Reece James, if he starts, would be a very underrated pick against Burnley away. He has a great record against the Clarets. Bruno Fernandes, Semenyo and Joao Pedro just miss out on the top 5, which comprises of Mateta, Saka, Salah, Mbeumo, and none other than Erling Haaland himself. So I did make a video of a chip strategy a couple of months ago. It's still relevant today. I'd highly recommend you check it out. And in some of my recent videos and live streams, I've covered a few of those graphics with updated game weeks also spoken about. But let me show you the lineups for Game Week 12. And I've got an 88% success rate so far this season. Let me go back to Arsenal here so I can maybe comment on these things a little bit more. But yeah, ultimately has been taken down a little bit because of Wolves. Otherwise, I'd be well into 90+%. And with Arsenal, it's quite solid. 112 correct predictions out of a possible 121 with some difficult fixtures on the horizon. But Raya will be in goal, Timber, Saliba, and I think Hincapié will replace Gabriel directly. And Calafiori, despite the yellow flag, should start in the North London derby tomorrow. Zubimendi, Eze and Rice with Saka, Trossard and Marino up front unless Gyökeres makes a return. With Aston Villa, they've got 2 yellow flags in their predicted starting 11. Onana could still enter into the equation, but I think Tielemans could get the nod against Leeds away. That's one change I've made from yesterday's predicted lineups podcast, but the rest is unchanged with Martinez, Cash, Konsa, Pau Torres, Dean, Kamara, McGinn, Rogers, Buendia, and Ollie Watkins. With Bournemouth, I've got 1 yellow flag in their starting 11 with Antoine Semenyo. I still think he'll start with Petrovic, Jimenez, Diakite, Senesi, Truffert, Scott, Adams, Brooks, Tavernier, and Evanilson. It's also worth noting that both Smith and Adams have recovered from their concussion and they underwent the protocols. They are available, but their training was affected, according to Iriola. He wasn't happy with the international break. Moving on to Brentford, I think they'll go for a 4-2-3-1 again with Kelleher, Coyote, Collins, Vandenberg, Hickey, Henderson, Yarmulke, Dango Ouattara, Sharda, Damsgaard, and Igor Thiago, who went up to 6.4 million overnight. And with Brighton, I also got 108 correct predictions so far this season. I think Verbruggen, Vifa, Van Heck, Dunk, Kadioglu, Baliba, Ayari, Minter, Rotter, Diogo Gomez, and Welbeck will start. And with Burnley, they could go to a back 5 and go for something like this with Dubravka, Walker, Laurent, Twansebi, Esteve, Hartman, Ogochukwu, Colin, Florentino Luis, Jadon Anthony, and Fleming. They predominantly play a back 5 when they play the top teams, and they could do the same against Chelsea and maybe Newcastle in a couple of weeks' time. Moving on to Chelsea, I think Robert Sanchez will start, and Reece James isn't nailed on, but he would be one of my favourite options this week if he does get the nod, with Fofana, Chalobah and Cucurella, Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo, but don't be surprised to see the likes of Andre Santos start and one of these players get a rest. Pedro Neto has been cleared from injury, the same goes for Enzo. I think Garnacho will play on the left and Joao Pedro just behind the lap, but anything's possible with this Chelsea 11. Now, if Crystal Palace is more stable and Mark Gay has been cleared from that injury, that's something I discussed from a week ago. I was always confident he would start. So Henderson, Richards, Lacroix, Gay, Wharton, Kamada, Munoz, Mitchell, Sarr, Yeremi Pino, and Jean-Philippe Mateta. Moving on to Everton, they had a few injury updates from yesterday. I think Roll is out for the foreseeable future, but they shouldn't really change anything in this predicted 11. Grealish went down in price overnight, but he would still start, of course, in this team with Pickford, Garner, Tarkowski, Keane, Mikalenko, Eric Bonham, Idrissa Gana Gay, Indai, Dewsbury Hall, and Tiano Barry. Moving on to Fulham, Rodrigo Muniz is out until February, so Jimenez will start up front with Leno, Tete, Anderson, Bassi, Sessegnon, Iwobi, Sandenberg, Wilson, King, and Kevin. So Lukic is suspended. He will be back for the Tottenham game in Gameweek 13, but yeah, essentially, I think they'll go for something like this with Iwobi in a deeper position. Moving on to Leeds United, they've got some horrible fixtures on the horizon. Perry and goal, Bogle, Rodon, Biol, Goodmanson, Ampadu, Longstaff, Stack, Aronson, Okafor, and Nemecha. That is my predicted Leeds 11. And with Liverpool, I've made one change. I think Robertson will start if he's fit enough. He is the first choice left back for the Reds right now, but yeah, there's also the Champions League game to think about in midweek and also the West Ham game next week. So don't be surprised to see Kirke start, and one of Jones or Szoboszlai will be at right back since Frimpong is unavailable, and Bradley will be out for the next 3 weeks. Alisson should start. That's what Arne Slot said yesterday, if all goes well. Konate and Van Dijk in central defence, Gravenberch and McAllister in the midfield, Salah and Gakpo on the wings, and Ekitike should start over Isak once again. And in the case of Florian Wirtz, he's going to be out for the next game or two. His injury isn't as serious as Conor Bradley's, but it is enough to see him ruled out against Forest. With Man City, it should be Donnarumma, Mateus Nunes, Ruben Dias, Cavadio, and O'Reilly, Nico Gonzalez, Bernardo Silva, Cherki, Foden, Doku, and Erling Haaland up front. We're now on to the other side of Manchester, and I think Lamens will start in goal with Yoro, De Ligt and Shaw, Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes in the midfield, and I made 2 changes here. So I've put Amad Diallo and Dorgu as the wing-backs, with Mbumo, Mount and Cunha as the front 3, but we could also see Amad play in a more offensive position. Moving on to Newcastle, no changes here. Pope, Trippier, Chow, Botman, Hall, Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, Joelinton, Murphy, Barnes and Nick Voltemada. And with Nottingham Forest, also no changes. Sel, Savona, Milenkovic, Murillo and Williams. I think Sangare versus Yates is a debate this week with the travel distances, but I'm going for Sangare alongside Anderson and Hutchinson to be on the right. Ndoye on the left. He went down to 5.6 million overnight, and Gibbs White just behind Igor Jesus to complete that 11. We're now on to the last couple of teams. I've got one headache here with Sunderland. It's between Gertruida and Alderete, but the Paraguayan has been cleared from the concussion protocols, and I think he'll start if there is no risk of any injury or whatever it is. But yeah, Alderete has been first choice, of course. He missed the last 3 matches because of the concussion. But Rufs in goal, Hume and Renildo Mandava as the wing-backs, Mukiele, Ballard and Alderete, Traore, Xhaka, Siddiqui and Lefay just behind Isidore, who is up front again. And with Tottenham Hotspur, they could play a back 5 against Arsenal and change things up a little bit. Xavi Simons, of course, would also be knocking on the door, but I'm going for Vicario, Borderot, Romero, Van de Ven, Spence, Joao Paulinho, Bentancur. Coulda should be available despite the yellow flag. Pape Maté Sarr, Odobert and Richarlison. But Colomwani is available after sustaining a broken jaw, I think, something like that, or a dislocated jaw over the international break. But yeah, Xavi Simons, Brennan Johnson, they could all start in this North London derby, but this is what I've gone for at this moment in time. And with West Ham, Potts has been very impressive for them recently. He is yellow flagged, but I think he'll start with Areola, Wan-Bissaka, Todibo, Kilman, Diouf, Soucek, Bowen, Somerville, Fernandes and Wilson. Lucas Paqueta is suspended after picking up his 5th yellow card last week in that 3-2 win against Burnley, so he will miss that Bournemouth clash. And last but not least, there's Wolves, and they've got a new manager in Rob Edwards. They could go for any sort of formation. Even the back 3 isn't guaranteed, but I think they'll go for this sort of lineup with Johnston, Santiago Bueno, Krejci, Totti Gomez, Joao Gomez, Andre, Chichawa, and Hugo Bueno, and Menetzi, Arias, and Strand Larsen. So we'll see how this all, stacks up when the lineups are out officially later on. I'm now going to go back to my squad, but I'm guessing a lot of these questions would have been answered with those graphics, like the top 10 captains and stuff like that. So make sure to rewind if needed, and hopefully you found value in all those graphics and updates. Anita says, are you British or Argentinian, brother? Keep up the great work, gracias. Well, the simple answer is I've got double nationality. So yeah, my family are from Argentina. I was born and raised in the UK, but yeah, I've got an affinity to Argentina because of my family. That's as simple as that. Yeah, Zero, it's completely random as well. When I gift memberships, which, by the way, in, the beginning of December, I'll be gifting 10 memberships, so keep your eyes peeled for that. You click a button and then YouTube does its thing. I think people who are active in the chat, who don't spam, have the best chance, but apart from that, I can't really tell you anything more to increase your chances of winning a membership for a month. Semenyo, Munoz, James Caicedo, Senesi, sub 1. Caicedo. Best goalkeepers for a wildcard team. Yeah, that was covered earlier with the FPL.team section. I think Raya would be my favourite, but yeah, Donnarumma's a good shout, and you might not be too keen on O'Reilly or Gvardiol, who are the best City defenders in FPL, but yeah, there's always a risk of rotation with those two. You don't get that feeling with Donnarumma. So I understand if you want to go for the Italian, but I still think it's David Raya for me. Hi Dylan, start one of Estev, Goodmanson or Van de Ven. Difficult one to say. I mean, Van de Ven has the best chance of scoring, especially with Gabriel out, but I'd probably go for Goodmanson. I just think all of them blank anyway, but he's got the best chance of a clean sheet from those 3 players. Is it worth offsetting a -8 with bench boost to get it out of the way or use one free transfer? The bench boost isn't that great to justify a -8 hit, to be honest with you. Even if you get 15 points from the bench boost and you've taken a -8, you're then getting 7 points from it. If you look at it from that perspective, I'm not sure if it's really worth it. So I would say no, stick with a free transfer. Gabriel to Timber, Van Dijk, Chalobah will free hit next game week. I think Van Dijk because he's got a good fixture this week. The same goes for next week, which is relevant to be fair because you're free hitting anyway. And when you go back to Game Week 14 with your normal team, guess what? Van Dijk also has a promising fixture, so it would be him. Forson Tavernier as an asset. He's had moments throughout the years. He's never really built upon that and shown consistency like Cliver did last season or Semenyo up until this point. But as a cheaper midfielder, I'm not completely against it. But having said that, he would just be your 5th midfielder and 8th attacker. Not really much more than that. He's not someone I'd like to rely upon week in, week out. Hi, man, do you think that because of the injury knocks at the Gunners, the defence take a massive knock and Spurs and next week Chelsea can get goals against them more so from this? Well, Arsenal conceded twice to Sunderland with Gabriel there, and I think he didn't play particularly well in that game, actually. But I still think Arsenal are so solid defensively because of their tactics and their shape, their organisation, and it's a collective effort. It's not just the defence. And by the way, if Hincapié replaces Gabriel, yes, it's a downgrade, but Hincapié is a very highly rated centre-back throughout Europe. So I think Arsenal can still keep clean sheets, even in these difficult games coming up. Not against Bayern Munich. I think that's a different entity to Chelsea and Tottenham. But yeah, I think Arsenal can still win these games and keep clean sheets, but the chances are definitely reduced. And I saw a stat earlier that Arsenal have only won 12 out of 30 games when Gabriel hasn't featured in the Premier League, which is a terrible record. So if that continues, then Arsenal are in big trouble. Yeah, hi as well, Andy. Thank you for the message. It's a good question. Bench Anderson or Mukiele? Now, if you look at the clean sheet odds, Fulham are actually in the top 6. So the bookmakers would favour them a little bit. Now, if you base it off what you've seen so far this season, you would probably favour Mukiele and Sunderland, but that is a very difficult one. They both can secure DEFCON, so then it just comes down to who you back to win the game, and I've actually gone for a draw in that match. But I would lean towards Anderson, personally. Thiago or Mateta? If you're buying one this week, it's Mateta. Pedro next week don't look like he would get anything, and you put Gunners and Chelsea against each other, I think. The thing is, though, Joao Pedro scored against Arsenal home and away last season, albeit, I mean, I'm just saying, by the way, giving context, one was a penalty, which was a bit, yeah, let's not go into that too much. And the other one, Arsenal were down to 10 men, and even that decision was questionable at best. But yeah, Joao Pedro is fixture-proof. He can definitely score against Arsenal. He'd be one of the more likely candidates, especially with Cole Palmer missing that game. Again, I don't know what it is about Palmer, but he always seems to miss those games against Arsenal nowadays. Hi, Dylan. Start one of Estev, Goodmanson, or Van de Ven. Yeah, that was covered already. Thank you. So Saka is 4th in my captaincy list, so he's ranked quite highly. I'm not completely against it, but Tottenham have the best away record. I think I've gone for 3-1 in my prediction, but even with that, I'm a little bit concerned and also cautious. I think it could be a tighter game than that, and Spurs could pose a lot of problems to Arsenal. So I personally would favour Haaland. The same goes for Salah and Mbeumo, but yeah, Saka's right up there for me. Van de Ven might be a good differential if he bangs. I wouldn't call him a differential, though. His ownership is really high. In terms of EO, yeah, maybe he's not going to be that high because most people will bench him against Arsenal this week. Hartman for 4 million or Estev for 3.9. Estev will get more DEFCON, but Hartman has been far superior when it comes to FPL output with the points, and that's because of the assists. I just don't think fullbacks are as appealing this season because of the changes to the, FPL system and the point scoring with DEFCON, but I'd probably go for Hartman here out of the two. Ya no se hablará más de Salah. Vienen buenas fechas para el Liverpool. Bueno, yo dije que Salah para mí es una buena opción contra Nottingham Forest, pero es difícil aportar a alguien que no está rindiendo en esta temporada, pero creo que está bien comprar a Salah en los próximos partidos, pero no si tienes que vender a Haaland en el proceso. Supreme Leader Dylan, I've never been called that before, thank you very much. Dylan Din. Okay, I didn't even catch that. Gabriel to Munoz or someone else. I already have Van Dijk. Yeah, I think Munoz and Timber would be the standouts to replace Gabriel, since you've already got Van Dijk as well. So, yeah, those would be the two I'd look at. You've also got Mark Gay, who has been very solid this season. He might even be the best Palace defender, but that could well change in the coming months or so. Yeah, Allison is back. Arne Slot said yesterday, if all goes well, he will start. And I think he will. That's why my predicted lineup, not just today, but also yesterday, I had Allison featuring for Liverpool. And that was my prediction for over a week now when I was making the graphics during the international break. Semenyo to Saka for free. Strong bench and captaining Haaland. As much as I like Semenyo, and I think he'll start, I'd be tempted. I think I would do it, especially if that's your only route to Saka. Hi, Dylan. Would you start Joao Pedro or Anderson? Joao Pedro. Well, if I were to use a chip now, it would be the wild card, but I don't think I'm going to do it. I mean, I've just had 2 weeks to, mull over my FPL decisions, and if I'm still unsure about wildcarding, I think the best thing to do is wait. So if I end up just doing what, you see here, so Gabriel to Van Dijk, I would have 2 free transfers in Gameweek 13. I'd probably free hit there and then wildcard a little bit later on, probably in 14. So I could change things up a little bit based on, how I've, just approached Gameweek 12 in the first place. That causes a domino effect with the other Gameweeks in mind. Who for captaincy, Haaland or Mateta? Yeah, you saw my captaincy list already. Haaland is number 1 for me. Okay, so let me go for the super chat and also the member questions first. So thank you to Nofo. Unsure which 2 to bench from Gay, Virgil, Senesi, Timber, Enzo, Sarr, Semenyo, Rice, Mbuma, Thiago. Thanks for all the content, Dylan. Very much appreciated, Nofo. And a good question. Okay, so the 2 players I would bench. Wow, that is a very big benching headache. I'd bench Timber. And I would probably bench Senesi. Can you do that? Because you've got Gay, Virgil, Senesi, Timber. But yeah, you need to start 3 defenders. So yeah, if you can only bench one of them, it would be Timber actually. Although that's certainly debatable. And I would maybe bench Declan Rice, who is in my FPL Challenge team. And don't get me wrong, he's a quality asset. He could definitely haul against Tottenham. But yeah, I think that's the way I'd go about things with your squad. Yeah. I mean, in the end, it might not matter. You might have Semenyo come off, it doesn't play at all, so Rice comes in anyway, but that's the way I'd go about it. And I'd put Timber second on your bench. Yeah, thank you, Awali. As he says, like the stream and subscribe. It costs nothing and goes a long way to supporting the channel. I provided a lot of updates in this stream and also graphics, team news, suspensions, injuries, you name it. The same goes for answering your questions. So thank you very much to the members, the moderators, patrons, and subscribers. You're much appreciated. And by the end of the year, we are looking to close in on 38k on YouTube. And then, of course, the big target will be 40,000 overall. So let me whiz through these questions. But like I said, members will be prioritized. The same goes for super chatters. So let me just have a look here and see what I've missed. So Jar says, is Semenyo, Voltemada, Timber, Van der Ven, Estev, Rodon, Dewsbury Hall sells? I don't think Timber's a sell. Now, I did talk about benching him just now in a specific team selection headache, but I don't think he's a sell. Voltemada is a hold in most situations, but Haaland, Thiago, and Mateta would be upgrades. So I'd consider Voltemada as the 4th best forward. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. But essentially what I'm saying is I think he's a hold in a lot of cases, but if you have the money and the means to go to Mateta, then I would recommend making that move. But even going to Thiago this week, I wouldn't be in a rush. If anything, do that in Gameweek 13 or 15. Semenyo, I think, is a hold. The yellow flag is the main concern there, but I think he'll start. And with Rodon, you could just keep him as your 5th defender, but I would sell Estev and Dewsbury Hall if possible. The same goes for Van der Ven. So I'd say it's kind of like half of the players that you mentioned are sells. If yes, then I'm thinking of a wild card. Yeah, look, there's also the question of who you don't have. So if you don't have Mbuma, Semenyo to him would make a lot of sense, right? And from that perspective, I'd recommend that transfer. The same goes for Voltemada to Mateta. So there are ways you can improve your team, but I don't see, I'd say 3 of the players that you mentioned, especially the first 3, I don't see them as particular sells. I think Timber would be held on to on the wild card. Hey man, should I bench boost with Mukiele, Xhaka, Tarkowski, and Dubravka? It's not a bad bench boost, but I'd probably say no. So yeah, 2 free transfers and a -4 to bring in Mbeumo, Mateta, and a defender should work. It just depends as well on what other chips you've got remaining. So if you've got the free hit as well, then yeah, I think the free hit could also help you, and I would try to avoid the hit if possible. So yeah, I don't know the rest of your squad. You might have posted it earlier, but I'll be honest, at this point, with so many different questions and stuff, difficult to remember all of that. But yeah, I'm not really against wildcarding now in your situation, and I think I talked about this earlier when we discussed your squad. So let's see what else we've got. Welcome Heated Gaming, a new member of the channel. Hello Dylan, this is my team. Raya, Timber, Munoz, Gay, Sarr, Semenyo, Enzo, Marino, Haaland, Voltemada, Ekitike. I like that. You've got a few differentials like Marino and Ekitike who could do well this week. Double Arsenal defense. I mean, they're still top of the clean sheet odds. And long term, I think is still viable. Yeah, Reinders. Yeah. I'd probably put Senesi first on your bench. You could even make a case for starting Senesi over Timber. That would be my advice since you've got Raya in your team already. But Timber's a quality right back. He's offering more attacking threat this season. But apart from that, I agree with the rest of your starting 11 and bench order. Start Timber, Delict, or Gay. I'd go for Gay this week. Keep or sell Enzo. Keep, as discussed in my Transfer Tips podcast, actually. Will Calafiori start? I covered all the predicted lineups yesterday in my video and also earlier today. If you just rewind, you'll see all the graphics kind of, gone through one by one. And I think Calafiori will start. So last week, in the heart of the international break, Fabrizio Romano said that Ricardo Calafiori is not injured. He is just managing his load and he should be available for the North London derby. So I think he'll start left back tomorrow. Dylan, should I start Voltemada, Anderson or Xhaka? I'd go for Voltemada. I've gone for a high-scoring game there between Newcastle and Man City, and I think Voltemada could score. I think James will play. It's up to you. If you start James, if you buy him, whatever it is, I personally think he'll start this match, but it's not guaranteed. This is Rosario Central, who just won the league in very contentious fashion, or they don't want a trophy just now. But yeah, I'd search it up if you've not heard the story. It's kind of a mad one, but we take it. Hopefully they do that with Arsenal one day as well. Timber, Van Dijk, Gakpo, bench one, have Raya. I'd bench Timber. I think with any Man City outfield player, with the exception of Haaland, there's always an element of risk there. I would be more keen on Doku, I think. That's something I've kind of changed my mind about over the past few weeks, but Cherki has a very good goals and assists record compared to minutes played. There's no denying that. So, yeah, Cherki, interesting option. I talked about adding him to the watch list, but I wouldn't go for him just yet. Thank you, Mina. Good to see you as well. Would you swap Ndiaye for Szoboszlai? Probably not. And I think the main reason why is what you just said, Szoboszlai being on 4 yellow cards. So for those that aren't aware, and I have covered suspensions very recently, for the first 19 Premier League games, if a player gets 5 yellow cards, they will miss the next Premier League match, which has happened to Lucas Paqueta, for example. And the likes of Szoboszlai are walking the tightrope. They've got 4 bookings, 1 more, and they'll miss a Premier League match. Take Gakpo for Enzo because of rotation risk. Yeah, but Gakpo's also rotation risk when Wirtz comes back, and that won't be too long. So I'm not entirely sure about that. Start Minter, Bowen, or Ndiaye. I'd go for Minter. Yeah, this question has been covered already, and you saw my captaincy list as well. Mateta was 5th, Haaland 1st. If you want to go a bit different, I don't blame you for going Mateta, but I'd personally go for Haaland. Should I bench Semenyo or Voltemada? I'd bench Voltemada. Caicedo or Thiago? Thiago. From those 4 players, I would bench Joachim Andersen. Grealish or Voltemada on the bench? Grealish. So, just to make it clear, I would start Voltemada. Sell Reinders to Sarr, but have less money in the bank. Yeah, try not to spam your message or repeat it. It is a bit annoying. Sell Reinders to Minter, but have more money in the bank. In isolation, I prefer Sarr. Not by much. My only concern is tripling up on Palace, but it's not necessarily a horrible idea. I think 2 Palace players is the sweet spot, but Yeah, as much as I like Minter, I'd go for Sarr. Should I take a -4 to replace Semenyo for Mbeumo? I would just hold Antoine Semenyo. There's also the most transferred in curse for the last 3 game weeks. We saw Voltemada and a few other players suffer from that. Mbeumo is currently the most transferred in player. That probably won't change, so bear that in mind. I think Mbeumo will do well, but yeah, not for a hit, in my opinion. Especially if you've got decent cover for Antoine Semenyo, should he miss out. Hey, Ndai to Saka for a hit. I like Ndai, but I'd be tempted by this. I'd probably go for it. Hi, Dylan. Reece James, Senesi, Lacroix, start 2. I'd bench Senesi here, reluctantly. Roy, who has a caps lock issue, says, sell Semenyo to Gakpo or Sarr. I'd rather go to Ismaila Sarr, but even with Semenyo, I think he'll start this weekend, personally, but that's just my opinion. Yeah, Dubravka or Pope, I did cover this question at the beginning. I would rather go for Dubravka, but ultimately both should concede. I need to start 2 out of Delap, Szoboszlai, and Evanussen. That's a difficult one, but I would probably bench Delap, actually, even though I back him to start. Reinders, Bruno to Minter and Mbeumo free. Bench 1 in Dio Calafiori. Yeah, for free, I like those transfers. And bench 1, Calafiori. I'd start in Dio. Bench 1, Thiago, Ismaila Sarr, or Enzo Fernandez. I don't like this, to be honest with you. I think all of them could return this week. If I had to pick one, it's probably going to be Enzo. And I don't like that at all. -4 in Ndai to Mbeumo. I'd probably go for a yes, even though I like Ndai. Campus, a squad. 1 free transfer, do Pope to Sanchez, then play Alderete, or Gabriel to Van Dijk. Gabriel to Van Dijk. So Dr. 7K34 puts his squad 1.7 in the bank. Yeah, you still got oh, not Gordon. You put Road on there. Okay. Because I was just gonna say, yeah, Gordon, sell him. Thank you, by the way, to the moderators like Wei Singh and Punjabi. Massively appreciated. Just be patient, your question will be answered. You know, spamming is a little bit like you're about to finish your jail sentence and then you try to escape from prison. You know, just wait a little bit and your question will be answered. Yeah, so with this squad, I think the players that are worth selling are Van der Ven, Marino in the long term, but I think for now he could be kept. I think he'll start tomorrow up front. I think Stack is sellable. And whilst I like Voltemada, you could go to Igor Thiago, and that gives you more funds to upgrade other positions. So, yeah, that's what I'd recommend over the coming weeks. Yeah, I think Kudus will start. He was close to making it against Man United a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, he's too important to Tottenham Hotspur to miss out the North London derby. I would start Timber over De Ligt. But then again, I did predict a United clean sheet. So, maybe that's not the right way to go about it. I don't mind starting a United defender this week, even over Arsenal defenders, but I won't say that too often, to be quite honest with you. So, yeah, I would go for De Ligt. I mean, otherwise I'd be contradicting my scoreline predictions, to be fair. But, of course, in most weeks, Timber is the clear standout. Cots. I'll call him Cots. Here's my team. Hopefully that wasn't baited. I have 1 free transfer. Any transfer ideas? Dubravka and Vicario. So I would make a goalkeeper transfer if possible, although that's not ideal. Decent defense. Okay, so I think Watkins, Grealish are the main priority sells. Even Foden, I'd look to move on. You've still got Salah. No Erling Haaland. Yeah, I would make a few changes, and I think Watkins has to go. So you can either use him as your Erling Haaland sort of cash cow, but then that probably requires downgrading 2 other midfielders, and then you'd have an imbalanced squad overall. So I don't know which chips you've got remaining. Let me know what you've got. But yeah, look, Vicario, Dubravka, even though I would recommend changing that, you know, Vicario to a different goalkeeper, it's not a big priority. So I'd focus more so on your forwards and midfielders here. So sell Grealish, Foden and Watkins, and if you can stretch to a way of getting Haaland and there's some cheaper options that are quite consistent, then I'd recommend that. But yeah, unfortunately, if you really want Haaland, it might require downgrading Salah, who looks quite good for the next couple. So maybe the best thing for you to do is just go without Haaland for the next 2-3 game weeks. And then once we get to AFCON, you sell Salah, and that's your way of getting back to Haaland, especially if you don't have the wild card anymore. But yeah, bringing in the likes of Mbeumo for the short term, you know, one of Enzo Fernandez, Rice, Ismail Assar, players like that. And I think Mateta in for Watkins. I think that's the way to go about it. Yeah, I would start Igor Thiago over Caicedo, as mentioned earlier. In Dai to Doku, not for me, but look, Doku's in pretty good form. There's no denying that. No interesting news from today. So I went through the lineups again. I covered a few things I didn't yesterday, or changed a few things here and there, but no updates from today as far as I'm aware. I will have a look now on Twitter and see if there's anything, but we've got less than 51 minutes until the deadline. Let's make sure to lock in. But yeah, I don't see anything. Okay, so let's get the stream up to 150 likes. It'd be greatly appreciated. I have been going live for a couple of hours now, answering all your questions and providing a lot of different updates. So be sure to drop a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and all that good stuff. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, DylanRCM. Also, you can become a patron or channel member, and also go to my Discord server, FPL League, Spotify. There are so many links down there, so make sure to join, and let's build all those social media platforms. And the big aim is to get to 38,000 by the end of the year. Bench Richards or Van Heck? I'd bench Van Heck. Is Fernandes captain viable? He's in my top 10. I believe I've put him 9th or 8th. I can just show you now, actually. But yeah, he's viable. That's the answer to your question. But I think there are better options elsewhere, as you can see in this list. That is how I'd rank the captaincy at the moment. Senesi or Van Dijk on free hit? I'd go for Van Dijk. Grealish, Gyökeres, Achimpong, Neto, Thiago and Lacroix worth it for a -4, or just no Lacroix? Well, it depends, right? Who would you start if you don't buy Lacroix for a hit? And I think that ultimately determines whether you should take the hit or not, to be honest with you. But yeah, Grealish and Gyökeres to Neto and Thiago looks good. I'm not a massive fan of Pedro Neto, but he has been decent in FPL this season. Bench 1, yeah, it would be Ndai there. Ross Harper. Thanks, Dylan, for responding. I just watched the stream back. Good luck this week. Thank you, Josh, and likewise. Yeah, I've been asked a lot about Caicedo Thiago, so I'm going to leave that one. I don't have Palace or Van Dijk. Who should I take to replace Gabriel? I already have Timber. Van Dijk fixture's really good, but only got 3 clean sheets until now. Palace defender already giving 9. Well, I'm not sure about 9, mate, because we've only played 11 match days so far. Even Arsenal don't have 9 clean sheets. But yeah, I think with Crystal Palace, they do offer better value, like Mark Gay in particular. So it just depends, really. But yeah, I think the Palace defender's probably a little bit better, especially if you can use those extra funds to upgrade other positions. King to Xhaka after deadline. It is an upgrade. I wouldn't want to start Xhaka week in, week out, but he's a good squad player to come in when necessary. Is it better to start in Ndai or Bowen, or get Virgil for Gabriel? That's a close one, and I wouldn't be surprised if Bowen started returning with these difficult fixtures. He's a quality player and fixture-proof, but yeah, I think I'd rather just get Virgil van Dijk for Gabriel, especially if you're quite weak defensively. Okay, I'm going to go back to the FPL setup, and also you can see the questions being highlighted. So let's see if this works. Yeah, so start 2 of Ndai, Calafiori, and Caicedo. I would bench Calafiori here, so I would start Ndai and Caicedo. If you go wildcard and not going well as expected, how do you feel about it? Well, not great, but I always say this with the wildcard, it's a long-term tool. It's not just about the immediate returns. In UCL Fantasy, for example, I didn't expect to get over 100 points in back-to-back weeks after wildcarding, but that obviously gives you a lot of confidence and it, reassures you that you've made the right decision. But yeah, it's ultimately a long-term tool. Start Semenyo or Thiago. I'd go for Semenyo. Who is going to play? Well, you saw my predicted lineups yesterday and also in the stream today. I think it'll be Hincapié as a natural like-for-like replacement. Start free Virgil, Senesi, Richards, Timber. So essentially bench one. I would arguably bench Timber this week. What date do you have to use up your first set of transfers? I'm guessing you mean chips, right? I mean, in terms of transfers to use for the Game Week 12 deadline, you can see the timer just below my big fat head. So we've got 45 minutes to lock these transfers in. But in terms of the first half of the season, which is from Game Weeks 1 to 19, and the second, Game Week 20 to 38, that's the kind of the time frames we're looking at when it comes to the chips. And we get one bench boost, one free hit, triple captain, and wildcard for the first half of the campaign, and the same goes for the second half of the season. So make sure to use every single booster by the time we get to Game Week 20. Should I bench boost with Voltemada, Jiren Timber, Dubravka, and Goodmanson? I do like Voltemada and Timber as a bench boost, yeah. So I'd probably say yes. And should I get in Boomer for Semenyo for a hit? No. I would personally not go for it because I think Semenyo will start, but that's just my opinion. Yeah, if I still had the triple captaincy, I would go for Erling Haaland in Game Week 13, but if you got the wildcard and or free hit, that can make it complicated because Game Week 13 is a good time to use both of those chips as well, and that should be prioritized. But yeah, Game Week 13 looks the best against Leeds at home. Haaland captain debate, why not going Saka? If not now, when? Well, I'll be honest with you, I have other fives to put out. Even Antoine Semenyo is yellow flagged. I've only got 0.8 in the bank, so in order to get to Saka, I would have to take a hit or just wildcard right now. And whilst I'm not completely against it, I just don't see a massive upgrade in terms of wildcarding compared to this squad that you see on screen. And I think with a few extra weeks of information, maybe seeing more injuries and suspensions and stuff like that, I can be in a better position to build a strong long-term wildcard so I can save the second wildcard until very late in the season, ideally after Game Week 30, which I discussed in my chip strategy video. But yeah, that is the way I'm looking at it right now. I've also got the free hit in my back pocket, but yeah, I think with Saka, he looks good for Tottenham at home, not so much for Chelsea away, in my opinion. Caicedo or Minter? I would start Minter this week. Bench one, Senesi, Richards, and Timber. Yeah, probably Timber again. Gakpo is so long-term? Yes, but I would hold him for the next game or two until Wirtz is back. If Mbeumo goes to AFCON earlier than expected or as expected, will Bruno go more deeper in the number 10 role? Well, he's already playing quite deep, right, in that 3-4-2-1 formation alongside Casemiro. We could see Fernandes play a bit further forward in Mbeumo's absence, which could help him a lot, but Fernandes will still be a decent FPL asset and tick along nicely with the set pieces, taking corners, free kicks, and penalties. And even from open play, he creates plenty of chances. What do you think about Truffert over Senesi? Gives me the money to go from Enzo to Gakpo, for example. I'll be honest though, I don't see Enzo to Gakpo as a massive upgrade, especially when Wirtz is back. He's been playing as the left winger in recent matches in a bit of a different sort of role. But I think Enzo's better than Gakpo, to be honest, so I don't really see that as like a priority. And Senesi has secured DEFCON so often that I think he justifies the extra 0.5 million over Truffert. But it's a good question, and if you were to go for another Bournemouth defender, I think Truffert is the one, or Petrovic between the sticks. But yeah, I think Senesi is probably the go-to Bournemouth asset still in that defensive line. Welcome, Singh. Good to see you. Lugman MC says, thanks for your response, Dylan. I'll start 3 of them. Should I bench Mukiele to start Enzo, Sarr, and Thiago? Yeah, I think so. I personally think Fulham will score, despite their struggles this season. And look, Mukiele is still a decent option. He can get 4 points minimum, but I think the others have a far higher ceiling this week. Is it stupid to have Konate and Van Dijk? I wouldn't say it's stupid, but I think one's enough with the way Liverpool defended this season. Hi, best cheap defender. If we're talking about very cheap, I'd still probably go for Mukiele. I think Hartman is decent. He's going under the radar, but you're relying a lot on assists, and I don't think that's sustainable. So when you also factor in DEFCON, the quality of that team, not just as an overall unit, but also defensively, I think Mukiele is the standout. Munoz and Mbuma versus Richards and Saka. Yeah, good question. It's probably Munoz and Mbuma for me. Play Keane or Stack? That's a difficult one. Probably Stack. If FPL made a rule, the next season we can only captain this player only maximum 5 times this season, how can you feel? I've been asked this though over the years, when Salah was the best captain by far, you know, last year, Haaland when he first joined the Premier League. I mean, how would I feel? A bit conflicted, because I think there might be better solutions to that instead of like preventing you from captaining someone, because that was a thing in F1 Fantasy where you couldn't captain or turbo boost or whatever it was called a driver who cost more than $20 million in that game. So essentially in FPL, the equivalent of that is, you know, not being able to captain anyone over 10 million. You know, so no Palmer, no Saka, no Haaland, no Salah. Maybe something that's worth bearing in mind is you can still captain Haaland, but maybe you get even more points from your captain if you go for a differential. I think that would be a good idea, but look, that's up for debate. Also, FPL is for the casuals mainly, or they try to appease to as many people as possible, so I don't see them doing something like that anytime soon. Is it too soon in the season to go against Haaland today? Not necessarily, and let's not forget Haaland has blanked twice against Villa and Tottenham, so there are opportunities, but you have to pick your moments well and have a lot of luck. I got the wild card, then the free hit. My aim is to get top 1 or 2 in my mini league at the end of Gameweek 19. Can you give advice of what the strategy is? Well, if you got the wild card and free hit, let's assume that you're happy with your squad right now, like I am, to a certain extent. I would free hit in Gameweek 13 potentially, and then wild card shortly afterwards, maybe even in Gameweek 14. That would be something to think about. Senesi or Van Dijk on the free hit? Van Dijk. Welcome to Stepaki, always a pleasure. Out of the Man City defenders, let me just get your question up, since I did lose it. Who do you prefer? Yeah, Nico Riley for me. But their game time seems dodgy. Well, I think since Man City lost, what is it, since the Brighton game, O'Reilly's been benched once in the Premier League, and that was against Villa. But, yeah, I don't think he's the most nailed on, especially during this Christmas period where we've got the Carabao Cup, we've got the Champions League, and a congested Premier League schedule. O'Reilly's not going to play every single game, but if you've got the defensive depth, he could be a good 4th option for you, maybe even a 3rd. But that's also providing that you've got some really solid options behind him to fill in when needed. Thanks, mate. Going about Haaland and with Watkins is a conscious choice, probably meaning Grealish to Minter, and we'll wait for AFCON to gain Haaland. Yeah, that makes sense. It's just Watkins. I started the season with him as well. He's been absolutely terrible. That's the main problem there. So I'd still recommend going to Mateta if you can. And maybe captaining him. That could be a nice differential this week. So thank you, Aranya. Sanchez, Senesi, Van der Ven, Lacroix, Saka, Semenyo, Caicedo, Rice, Mateta, Joao Pedro, Haaland, Dubravka, Reinders, Gabriel, Renildo. 1 free transfer, 0.3 in the bank. So I wouldn't take hits if possible and, you know, make multiple transfers. So I would recommend Gabriel out to Van Dijk and then start him with a Van der Ven and then keep the rest as it is. There is a chance of rotation for those Chelsea players like Joao Pedro, and I'm looking more specifically at Caicedo. But he's still worth holding in the long term. So, yeah, I think that's all you need to do for now. Gabriel to Van Dijk. You've got 0.3 in the bank. That would turn into 0.8. You can use that to upgrade Reinders in the coming weeks, which would be the priority afterwards. But you can obviously just bench him now, so you don't need to do that necessarily in Gameweek 12. So that's my recommendation for your squad. Thank you, Tuna. If you were gifted a membership today, the person to thank is Paredes. He gifted 5 memberships earlier. I had a dream I bought in Bruno and he did well, but don't remember who I sold in the game. Okay, yeah. Dreams can be funny sometimes. That's why I said bonuses for differentials. I mean, we saw something like that in Club World Cup Fantasy. Not for the captaincy, but you had that point scoring system where players with less than 5% ownership who scored more than 4 points would get extra points, essentially. I mean, even just me explaining that could seem a bit complicated to some people, or it'll be difficult to remember. But maybe just having differentials score extra points in general, that would encourage people to go a bit different. The only problem with that sort of system is we could see a lot of late surges and changes during deadline streams and stuff where someone is a differential and they suddenly go over the limit. And we saw that a few times in Club World Cup Fantasy, and therefore it becomes redundant and you buy a player for nothing in the end. Rodgers, Doku, or Minter? My preference is Minter. Bench 1, Krupi Jr., Welbeck, or Doku? The thing is with Krupi Jr., even off the bench, he could score against West Ham. I'd definitely start Welbeck, and afterwards it's very close, but I'm going to say bench Doku, which sounds crazy. That'll probably age like milk. Next chip when? Well, Gameweek 13, I'll play a chip. It's either the wildcard or free hit. The most likely at the moment is probably the free hit, but I'll talk about this in my team selection very soon. Yeah, Pope Dubravka, very popular question today. Not even sure why, but yeah, it would be Dubravka for me. Do we ever get early Chelsea news? Fantasy Football Scout predicting Cucurella not starting. Do we ever get early Chelsea news? Not that I can recall. And even over the last year or so, we've gotten fewer leaks. You know, Arsenal and City typically would have a few leaks, but we haven't really seen that. Let me actually have a look at what you're saying here. Okay, yeah. So they've gone for Hato in the predicted 11. And they've also got Caicedo on the bench. I wouldn't completely rule it out. And let's not forget, Chelsea will face Barcelona and Arsenal over the next week. So if there was ever a time to rotate, it would be against Burnley. So, look, I've got Cucurella in my predicted 11. I just think with Chelsea, it's going to be very difficult to predict how they're going to line up. But in terms of early news, keep your eyes peeled for it on Twitter, but I wouldn't really hold my breath. Upgrade King or Goodmanson for the bench boost? I'd rather upgrade King, I think. Especially if you can go to Minter, Sarr, Enzo Fernandez, Rice, etc. Yeah, I think Ndai to Saka for a hit is worth it, as much as I like Ndai. Paqueta and Anthony to Doku and Buendia for a hit. Buendia's been in great form. Doku's also been playing very well, but for a hit, I'm not so sure. I'd just stick with the free transfer. First bench option, I prefer Ndai. Imagine we go Gabriel to Van Dijk route due to easy fixture on paper, and one mistake from Liverpool defence cost us points. It can happen. It's football. Even with Arsenal a few weeks ago against Sunderland, they made some very amateur errors. Raya, even the defenders as well, and they conceded some very cheap goals. It can happen to anyone. Order Van Dijk, Munoz, and Lacroix. Probably Munoz first, Van Dijk second, Lacroix third, but it's very close between those three. Morning took out Timber, Marino, and Voltemada for Virgil, Semenyo, and Thiago for a hit. A -8. Who to captain now? Well, I've got Haaland first on my captaincy list, Saka's fourth, so that speaks for itself. I'm not so sure about that -8, to be honest, and buying Semenyo is quite a interesting choice, let's put it that way. Considering that he is yellow flagged, I think he'll start, but yeah, I didn't expect that. I still think Timber's worth holding on to long term, but if you've got Raya in goal, then that's fair enough. Voltemada's good. I think Thiago's better. Not really worth the hit, though, especially this week. Bench 1. It's between Caicedo and Ndai this week to bench, and I'd probably go for Caicedo on the bench. FPL Challenge, we could go 2-2-1 formation with 2 DMs in midfield. Yeah, I did show you my FPL Challenge team earlier. I'll go back to it after the deadline has passed, but yeah, I've already got Declan Rice in there. And actually, I think I've got them for that formation, haven't I? Well, you'll see it very soon anyway. Voltemada, Caicedo, Thiago, bench 1. I'd probably bench Caicedo. Thinking Bruno in for Caicedo, also Rodon or Van der Ven first bench. I think Leeds are more likely to keep a clean sheet than Tottenham, but Van der Ven is more likely to get something, either through DEFCON or the goal scoring. Now, they both offer threat from set pieces, to be fair, but I'd go for Rodon first on the bench. Yeah, Bruno in for Caicedo, looks solid. Should I start Rice or Caicedo? This is a close one, but I'm going to go for Rice. Hi Dylan, best regards. Who to bench? Senesi, Reece James, Timber, Munoz, Minter, Semenyo, Rice, Gakpo, and Dye, Mateta, Pedro. Which two to bench? Reluctantly, I would bench Timber, and it's between Rice and Dye again. I'm going to say Dye. And Dye on the bench. Yeah, so in my Campsy list, which you saw a few times in the stream today, and also in my wildcard video, Semenyo is 7th, and Haaland's top. So that's all I can really say. Transfer Paquets for Cunha. I just haven't seen enough from Cunha, especially in terms of the consistency with goal contributions. But yeah, I think buying a United midfielder is a good idea. Mbeumo and Fernandes are my favourite ones there. But yeah, Cunha would be the sort of overlooked option because of how he's kind of started this season with the goals and assists. But I would say yes, but there are other midfielders I'm more keen on, like Rice, Sarr, Enzo Fernandez, Minter. There are plenty where that came from. Yeah, I like Saka, but Haaland is probably the best captain again. Doku, Caicedo, or Rice? I'm going to say Rice. Dylan, benching dilemma, Sanchez, Calafiori, Van de Ven. Sorry, Van Dijk. I don't know why I'm dyslexic when it comes to that. You've also got Van de Ven. He's on the bench. Senesi, Sarr, Semenyo, Eze, Gakpo, Joao Pedro, Mateta, Haaland. Dubravka, Enzo, Anderson, Van de Ven on the bench. Free transfers, no chips. Okay, at least you've got free transfers. That's a good position to be in. I'd keep Sanchez for now. He's arguably a sell in Game Week 13. Your defensive line looks good for this week. No need to really change anything. Sarr, Semenyo, Eze, Gakpo. I just don't know what money you've got in the bank, though. And you've got Enzo on the bench. I would start him if you can. Now, who do you start him over? That is a very difficult one, but maybe Eze, which I don't really like saying, but that's a possibility. Yeah, I think with this week, you don't need to make a transfer. I'd probably just roll, and then having 4 free transfers next week could help you rival the free hitters and wildcarders in Game Week 13. If Gakpo is nailed, I have no doubt to keep him long-term. I just don't think he's nailed. When Wirtz comes back, which should be fairly soon, so just to kind of break it down, Arne Slot said yesterday that Conor Bradley's out for the next 3 weeks due to a muscle injury, and Wirtz also has one, but he said that Wirtz isn't as serious, and he should be back soon. So Gakpo's really just to hold for the next week or two. That's about it. Rodwell says, Gusto, what about him? I mean, he could start. But, yeah, with some predicted lineups I've seen for Chelsea, they've had both Gusto and James start together. I don't think that'll be the case here. We could see that against Barcelona or Arsenal, not against Burnley, in my opinion. Welcome, Alexander. Hello from Serbia. I have Gabriel, Calafiori, Stack, Reinders, Semenyo with 1 free transfer. Can only bench 3 of these. Would you take a hit or just sell Gabriel and hope Semenyo or Calafiori play? So I think Semenyo and Calafiori will start. Semenyo is yellow flagged. We didn't get any clarity from Iriola yesterday, but I'm quite confident that Semenyo will get the nod against West Ham. And as for Calafiori, Fabrizio Romano said last week that he doesn't have an injury. He is just managing load, and he will be available for the North London derby. And he is the first choice left back for Arsenal. With Gabriel out of the equation, I think Arsenal will go for Hincapié to replace him like for like and keep Calafiori as the left back. So yeah, I think both of them will play. And because of that, I would just sell Gabriel. I think that's the way I would go about it. There is obviously an element of risk there because you've got 2 yellow flag players in your starting 11. I recognise that, but I think it's worth keeping them, in my opinion. Semenyo to Rice, not for me. Not this week anyway. Would you captain Haaland or Salah if you had both? Well, Haaland's above him in the captaincy list, so it would be Haaland. If we saw more from Salah, then yeah, I'd be very keen on recommending something different, but the problem with this Haaland thing and the captaincy is the alternatives and these premiums aren't offering the consistency, and that's where the main issue lies. Bench 1, Semenyo, Enzo, Minter. Reluctantly, I would bench Minter, but it's a close one. Hey Dylan, how's it going? Please bench 1, Thiago, Senesi, Chalobah. I'd probably bench Senesi. Yeah. Between Semenyo and Caicedo, which Big Sam 3152 asks, I would start Semenyo and bench Caicedo. Haaland himself carrying Norway. I wouldn't forget Odegaard. He's actually the top assister of the World Cup qualifiers in Europe. Just saying. Thank you, Ignacio. Mejor cambio para Semenyo. Jugará Calafiori. Sí, como dije en inglés recién, creo que Calafiori va a empezar el partido. No está lesionado. Solo estaba manejando sus minutos y también teniendo un descanso porque tiene una historia de lesiones, especialmente en el Arsenal. Tengo a Xhaka y a Mukiele, no transfers, ¿o qué opinas? Sí, creo que Xhaka y Mukiele está bien para estar en tu banco. No son jugadores que me gustaría jugar en cada jornada. Pero sí, para mí Semenyo va a jugar contra West Ham. Pero si quieres a vender a Semenyo, sería por Mbumo, por ejemplo. Start Joao Pedro or Ndai. Joao Pedro. Got 2 free transfers with 1.3 in the bank. Looking to take out Reinders. Best midfield suggestions for around 6.5. Minter would be up there. But Reinders cost 5.4. You could still reach Ismail Assar, for example. Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, they would all be within reach. I think Ismail Assar would be my favourite. So yeah, start Caicedo or Timber. Close one. But I would lean towards Caicedo. Let's go. FPL is back. Thank you, Banjo. Is Mateta a good captaincy option? Yes, he is, which is why he features in my top 5. Is Enzo an obvious pick over Neto? Well, Neto has been going under the radar. He's right up there for points scored amongst midfielders, but I still prefer Enzo. I think he's the better player. He's got more routes to points, and I think Enzo is just a bit more consistent overall. I have Caicedo, Pedro, and Chalobah. Scared they may not start. I can tell by the caps lock. Should I get somebody else? Maybe Minter. I am on free hit. Well, Caicedo isn't someone I'd bring in on a free hit anyway, to be honest. I understand Pedro and Chalobah, not so much Caicedo. He's the one I'm most concerned about in terms of the minutes and whether he starts or not. So yeah, I think Minter over Caicedo is definitely an option for you. Gay or Timber? Gay this week. Should I bench Voltemada and go 3-5-2? But who are you benching him for? That's my question. Hey mate, hope you're doing well. Thinking about going Pope to Alisson. Got 4 free transfers after doing Gabriel to Virgil. Yeah, but double Liverpool defence, as good as their fixtures are, is a bit is a bit iffy. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, to be honest. Yeah, I don't think I'd go for that goalkeeper transfer. You probably have Pope and Dubravka. That's been a very popular question today. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. Transfer Kudus to Enzo. I think Kudus will start tomorrow, but yeah, I think Enzo's an upgrade. The same goes for Ismail Assar, Rice, Minter, all these players I've mentioned. Should I stick with Minter or upgrade to Gakpo? Stick with Minter. I think Gakpo's only an option for the next week or two, whilst Wirtz is out. First bench option, Anderson or Ndai? I covered your question earlier, mate. Ndai. Whom to buy out of Gravenberch, Tavernier or Anderson? Probably Gravenberch, actually. Not my favourite, but he has been getting a few goals here and there. DEFCON on the odd occasion, and he's a quality player. Welcome. Buenos dias, Dylan. I have seen your predicted lineup video, but I don't know what to do with Calafiori. Well, I still think he starts. Nothing's changed. And I did provide the updated versions today, if you rewind the stream. Hi, Dylan. How's it going, mate? All good. What about you? Play one of Voltemada, Elliot Anderson, or sell Voltemada for Thiago and play him instead. I just play Voltemada. I don't have Virgil on Palace Defender. I covered this question earlier. Thank you very much. Captain Salah or Haaland? Haaland for me. Who do you think is better to start, Krupa Jr. or Caicedo? Yeah, probably Caicedo. More likely to start anyway. Bench one in Ndai, Caicedo, Sar, Voltemada. Reluctantly, it would be Caicedo. I would start Sar and Voltemada. It's between the others. I'd probably go for Ndai over Caicedo. Bench one, Thiago, Senesi, Chalobah. Senesi. Yeah, very close to locking in. Now it's 22 minutes. Obviously, this was posted a few minutes ago. Yeah, with this one, Tustipaki, I'd rather bring in Mbeumo, to be honest with you, over Bruno Fernandes. And yeah, as mentioned earlier, Rodon over Van de Ven first on the bench. Who to buy covered. Hi Dylan, start Henderson or Raya? Henderson. Adamak says, I'll be free hitting next week or triple captaining Haaland. Yeah, that's the problem if you've got all those chips available, because Gameweek 13 is a great time to use all of those boosters. So you've got to weigh that up a little bit as well. Captain Saka over Haaland. I'm not completely against it, but I prefer Haaland. Is Semenyo a sell? I think he's a hold, which I talked about in my trans tips a few days ago. I have Alderete stack, Burn on the bench. If Semenyo doesn't start, none of my bench will play, I think. What do you think? Well, Alderete's back. There's no guarantee he starts, though. And with Stack, it's between him and Tanaka. So I think they will get minutes, Alderete and Stack, but there's no guarantee they start the game. And I personally think Semenyo will get the nod, and he won't be benched or left out completely, but only time will tell. Hey, Dylan, bench one of Senesi or Anderson? I would bench Anderson. James to Anderson, Semenyo to Bruno or Voltemada to Thiago, James to Van Dijk, both for a hit. I would just do... To be honest, though, I would not make any of those transfers. James to Van Dijk long-term looks the best, but for a hit, I just keep Reece James and hope he starts, really. So if you've got the squad depth, I would just roll and do James to Van Dijk next week when Chelsea face Arsenal. Yeah, haven't seen the other one. What was this? Got 2 free transfers, 1.3 in the bank. Looking to take out Rangers. Already have Sarr, Minter and Saka. Yeah, I said it would be the standout. Yeah, that's a bit of an awkward one. 6.5 and below. I mean, that's where you could go a bit rogue and pick Buendia, for example, who's showing great form, and Aston Villa have promising fixtures, but I'm not completely sold on that. And speaking of which, someone asked me about Buendia, so yeah, I kind of summed it up there. If I were to go for a sort of like really low-owned differential at a cheap price point, you know, Buendia would be under consideration for me. And amongst Villa midfielders, I think Rodgers is the only one I'd prefer over him. But yeah, Buendia's been quite impressive. Got 2 reds today, Ekitike and Virgil, says Banjo. Yeah, hopefully, hopefully Van Dijk can give us a clean sheet or something. But I wouldn't hold my breath. Szoboszlai and Thiago or Guiu and Gakpo? Szoboszlai and Thiago. I would love to have sold King for Bruno, but not rich enough. Yeah, that would be ideal. But once again, I'd rather just go for Mbeumo. Start Marino or James? Reece James. I have Pep and Dubravka. Should sell one of them and buy a better goalkeeper. Can't have Raya, though. Already have 3 Arsenal players. Maybe Donnarumma. And that's your way of covering City defensively. That could be the best way to go about it. Not really, Francisco. I covered all of this in my lineups video yesterday and also in the updated version earlier today. So with Semenyo, Iraola gave no update, essentially, but I think he will start. And as for Anthony Gordon, he's touch and go, according to Eddie Howe, and a late decision will be made. Is Munoz for captain a crazy pick? It's a bit different. I don't think it's a bad pick, necessarily, so it could definitely be considered, that's for sure. Yes, we're fast approaching the deadline. Thank you very much. Senesi or Ndai, bench 1. Probably bench Ndai. Thank you, Jeff. Hola, Dylan. Gabi fuera por otro del Arsenal o Van Dijk. Yo haría por Van Dijk porque ya tienes a Raya. Rodgers or Marino? Marino. Semenyo to Gakpo, Rodgers or Voltemada to Thiago, wildcarding next week, so looking for 1-week punts. Yeah, I mean, maybe Voltemada to Thiago in this case, but I don't see that as a massive upgrade in Gameweek 12. Hey, love the content. Start Enzo Calafiori. Enzo. And thank you very much. Replace Bowen or Gabriel? Well, ideally both, but yeah, Gabriel's out for the next month, so probably him. Now, if you can do Bowen to Mateta, and let's say you've got Senesi to cover Gabriel, it's all team dependent, right? That would change my answer. So without knowing the context of your squad, it's quite difficult to say definitively, but yeah, I think Gabriel is the kind of priority because of how long he's out for. Start Konsa or Van de Ven? Konsa. Who to captain? Yeah, this has been covered to death, mate. Bowen for Thiago or Mateta? Yeah, Mateta for me. But you do raise a very good point at the end. With Thiago, you can get Saka in for Eze, which looks very nice. The thing is with Saka, I would either buy him now or in Game Week 14 I don't think buying him against Chelsea is a great time. I don't think he's ever scored or assisted at Stamford Bridge, despite having a good record against Chelsea overall. I've captain Mateta, risky. Yeah, but it's a good pick. I think his stats are only second behind Haaland amongst forwards. Great fixture on paper. The only thing is we don't know how Wolves are going to play with their new manager. Yeah, so as covered earlier, I would start Senesi. Szoboszlai, Thiago covered, thank you very much. Would you really start Voltemada over Caicedo? Yeah, I would. Hey, Dylan, bench one of Senesi or Anderson? I would bench Anderson. Other defenders are Munoz and Van Dijk. Yeah, a lot of these questions I've covered, so I'm going to just kind of zone in and hone in on the questions I haven't answered, or even messages. Banjo says Enzo hat-trick would be awesome. Not going to happen, is it? Sell Semenyo or Calafiori? I think both of them will start, but yeah, I'd rather sell Calafiori out of the two. Which one would be better? Calafiori to Van Dijk this week and Semenyo to Saka next week, or just Voltemada to Thiago this week? I'd probably say the Calafiori and Semenyo route. Selling those two. Start Ndiaye or Caicedo. It's really close, but I'd lean towards Ndiaye. Play one of Voltemada, Elliot Anderson. Yeah, this has been covered. Hey Dylan, quick benching dilemma. By the way, thank you to Punjabi for moderating the chat. Who would you put as first sub, Goodmanson or Mark Guiu? Yeah, Guiu could score off the bench, that's true. A bit similar to Krupi Jr., but yeah, I'm still going to say Goodmanson. Better chance of a clean sheet. Very close one, though. Ultimately, I wouldn't really be banking on any of them. Gabriel, Calafiori, Semenyo, Voltemada, Pope. Do I free hit? Yeah, not a bad time to free hit, but as I mentioned before, Calafiori and Semenyo should start. So it's really just Gabriel missing out for you. And you've got two Newcastle players against Man City, but I don't mind Nick Voltemada in that fixture. With Nick Pope, that's a different story. Saka or Mateta captain instead of Haaland? Well, Saka's fourth, Mateta's fifth in my list, so that kind of answers it. Gone against Haaland twice and backfired, but Newcastle way, but then again, they have a few out. And also, Erling Haaland's in great form. Man City are also showing a lot of consistency. I think they've won 8 out of the last 10 matches. So, for me personally, it's still Haaland, but if you wanted to go against him, I'd lean towards Saka, only just though. Midfield, Gakpo, Caicedo, and Ndiaye, Iwobi, Bruno. Looks okay. Iwobi will likely play a deeper role with Lukic suspended. Start 2, Semenyo, Voltemada, Gay, Sessegnon. I would start Semenyo and probably Mark Gay. Very close one there. Thank you, Punjabi. As he says, like and subscribe. It costs nothing and also helps the channel. Start 2, Semenyo, Sessegnon, Gay, Voltemada. Yeah, I just covered that, didn't I? Yeah, so I need to move on. Hi, Dylan. Thank you for your content. Bench 1, Semenyo, Thiago, Caicedo, and Ndiaye. Yeah, it's between Caicedo and Ndiaye to bench. I've said all along I'd lean towards benching Caicedo. What do you think of Joao Pedro's minutes today? Yeah, an early sub is possible, for sure. The Barcelona and Arsenal games are more important, arguably. And that's where the best players need to be kind of rested and well prepped for. So, yeah, I don't think he'll play 90 minutes. Voltemada to Mateta for free, yes. Gabriel out, Virgil in, that's what I've done. I'd recommend it to most people. On a wild card, Konate and Sarr or Van Dijk and Caicedo. Difficult one. Very difficult one. I would lean towards Van Dijk and Caicedo. Best 5.4 million midfielders. I'm guessing you got Reinders and you want to sell him. Probably Xhaka. Enzo, Voltemada or Konate, Buendia for this week. Very close call. I'm going to go for Enzo and Voltemada though. Yeah, as for selling Burn, I don't know what money you've got in the bank, but Mark Gay could be a good replacement for him. No, not for me. One Liverpool defender's enough. Just Van Dijk. If you wanted to go for a second, probably Konate, but not something I'd really recommend. Yeah, Mukiele, long throw-in set piece. Yeah, a lot is made about throw-ins and set pieces and stuff, but yeah, the less said, the better. Yep, I think Semenyo will start. I've been quite consistent on that. Gabriel to Van Dijk or Burn Voltemada to Thiago. I will do Gabriel to Van Dijk. Dubravka or Sells, bench 1. I'd bench Sells. Thoughts on Sky getting UCL in 2027? I won't be paying for it, so I couldn't care less, to be quite honest with you. I know they're getting the Conference League and the Europa League, and I think TNT Sports are losing rights. I think Paramount might even get them. So we'll see what happens, but I'd like to see Amazon get them, if anything. I think their coverage is usually better. They've got more options. And yeah, I mean, I've already used Amazon anyway, so that would be my preference, but I don't see that happening. Mbeumo or Igor Thiago? Is this for captaincy or what? I mean, I prefer Mbeumo, to be honest with you. He's second in my captaincy list. I don't think Igor Thiago's in my top 10, actually. And I think the best time to buy him is either game week 13 or 15, with the Arsenal fixture in between. I have two teams. I'll go against Haaland with Mateta and Pedro. But fair enough. I mean, yeah, whenever someone's mentioned having two teams, they've received a bit of stick in the comments and the live chat. I mean, it is what it is. I've only had one team ever in FPL. But yeah, just see how it goes and we can assess which team is doing better. Thank you as well to Ahmad. Mourinho looks like he will surely start him over and die. Yeah, I think so. Now, Arteta can keep things under wraps. So would it surprise me if Gyökeres was back, Odegaard, Madueke? Not really. And I actually think Madueke and Martinelli could be in the squad with Odegaard. But based on the reports I've seen, yeah, I think Mourinho will start front, and I would also start him over in Die in FPL terms. Yeah, I think Semenyo will play, but of course it's good to have a backup plan if needed. So having Ndai first on your bench is a great position to be. I mean, I'm starting Ndai. If I was in a position of strength, I'd arguably be benching him like you are. But yeah, start Mourinho, Ndai first on the bench, and if needed, he'll come on for Antoine Semenyo. Good luck as well, Safair. And yes, we are approaching the deadline. 10 minutes to lock in, and things are getting a bit feisty in here. Saeed says midfield, Mbeumo, Saka, Sarr, and Bruno, Pedro, Mateta, Haaland up front. What do you think, and who should I captain? Look, Haaland for me is the best captain. If you want to go a bit different, then I would highly consider Mbeumo. So the way I ranked it was Haaland first, Mbeumo second, Salah third, Saka fourth, and Mateta fifth. You can see the captaincy list right now. I did cover it a few times, but yeah, that is my captaincy list for Game Week 12. Is it perfect? Probably not, but that is sort of a nice little guide for you when it comes to comparing these assets for the upcoming deadline. I'd keep Reece James for this week personally. I've said this before, Declan, but yeah, Van Dijk is an upgrade long term. I'm not going to deny that. I'd probably make that transfer in Game Week 13. Diogo says, would you do Burn to Ruben Diaz / Mateus Nunes for a -4? Not for a hit, especially if you've got decent defensive depth. I'd rather start a Sunderland defender, for example, or even Leeds option instead of taking a hit. Interesting in Mbeumo going Bruno because mini league leader has Mbeumo, etc., says Twisted Parky. Yeah, it's just he's the most informed midfielder in FPL right now. He's kind of taken over from Antoine Semenyo, but look, these things can change very quickly. Yeah, unfortunately, Trini, there are no Chelsea leaks as far as I'm aware. But if you do see something, the same goes for anybody watching, then let me know. Put a link in the live chat and I can go through it. But I don't expect Chelsea or to get a predicted lineup or a leaked lineup for Chelsea, to be quite honest with you. I'm having another look on Twitter right now and I don't see anything. Okay, so a big up to everyone who has liked the video and all that good stuff. Let's get this stream to 150 likes. We are very close to that. And also subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'll be answering more questions until the end. But yeah, if I've already answered your question, I'm going to go to new ones just for the sake of repetition and to ensure I cover as many questions as possible. So let's do that now for the remainder of this stream. Members will be prioritized as usual. That is one of the main perks of signing up. So, start Bowen, Voltemada, or Ndai. I'd start Voltemada, personally. Thank you, John Paul. Who to bench from James or Minter? I'd bench Minter reluctantly. Now, having said that, James is a bigger rotation risk. Jamie Santos, the birthday boy from a few weeks ago. Raya, Reece James, O'Reilly, Gay, Garnacho, Mbeumo, Semenyo, Saka, Haaland, Pedro, and Welbeck. Yeah, it looks pretty solid. I'm guessing that's like a free hit team. I wouldn't go for O'Reilly, though, if this is a free hit squad. I know he did well for you last week against Liverpool, but yeah, I'm not too sure about him against Newcastle away. I think City will concede. I think Rye's fine, and Arsenal are top of the clean sheet odds, but I'll be honest, I think Spurs will score a goal tomorrow. But the midfield and forward line looks really solid. I think Welbeck over Thiago is something to consider for the next couple of weeks. But I think timing is very important, because if you were to wildcard or free hit in Gameweek 13, for example, you would lean towards Thiago when he faces Burnley at home. It's a bit different this time round, though, and you would favour Brighton slightly more than Brentford, arguably. So good team overall, but I would have some question marks about O'Reilly, Garnacho, and possibly Welbeck, but I think that is a good pick, actually, for Gameweek 12. Start Consor van der Ven. Consor. Thank you, Grandpa70. Just wanted to say thanks, Dylan. All the best for this game week. I appreciate your comments as well throughout the international break and also in the stream, so all the best to you as well. Yes, lock and load. I already made my transfer, Gabriel to Van Dijk. I don't see myself doing anything more, to be honest with you. So Sanchez in goal, away to Burnley. I've also got Joao Pedro to double up on Chelsea there. 2 Palace players against Wolves away in Lacroix and Sarr. No Mateta, which could backfire again. Timber at home to Tottenham. Virgil van Dijk facing Nottingham Forest, my new signing. Ndiaye away to United. And of course, Fernandes features in the same game. If Antoine Semenyo misses out against West Ham, I've got Renildo Mandava replacing him to form a back 4. Voltemada, Haaland, and Joao Pedro will complete the starting 11. I've captained Haaland and vice-captain Joao Pedro. Which, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But Reinders not really an option for me. He's second on my bench. Dan Burn is suspended. And Dubravka against Chelsea. Yeah, I'd rather start Sanchez. And we'll see how that pays out. Or how that pans out, I should say. Okay, so my chat has actually crashed a little bit. So I'm going to get back to where I was. And unfortunately, it doesn't show me which messages I've already gone through. So I'm going to have to skim this very quickly. Sofer says start 2 of Ndiaye, Voltemada, and Rice. I would bench Ndiaye. Many FPL accounts on X are going against Haaland for the captaincy. Saka, Mbeumo, Bruno captains. Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't mind captaining Haaland anyway, even if he does blank. If that results in Man City dropping some points, that'd be quite lovely, but I am asking for a lot there. I still think they'll get the job done against Newcastle, even if Haaland does blank. Okay. Yeah, just had another look on Twitter. Haven't seen anything. There is a chance that Rangers starts, but I haven't got him in my predicted 11. But there were a few lineups I saw which contain Rangers in there over Cherki. But yeah, I think Cherki will start. Play Thiago or Ndiaye. Thiago. Start Chalobah or Caicedo. Chalobah. Yeah, Sarr is not a bad captaincy option, but Mateta gets the bulk of the chances, and he's shown more form and consistency in the Premier League. Yeah, Liverpool midfielder, I mean, Salah's the standout, but he's so expensive, and I don't want to rip apart my team, even on the wild card. I think Gravenberch is decent. Szoboszlai is on 4 yellow cards, but he's also not too shabby. For the next week or two, I'd go for Gakpo, whilst Wirtz is out, but once the German is available, I'd avoid Gakpo completely. Ndiaye or Reinders, it's definitely Ndiaye. You can also see it in my starting 11. Hello, Dylan. First sub, Rodon or Mukiele? I prefer Mukiele. Next week, I'll free hit. Thoughts on Gabriel until game week 15-16, and then see if we have an update. I would just sell him, because he could be out for longer than 3 to 4 weeks. Rodon or Mukiele, yeah, covered. Virgil, Cash, Van Dijk. Hi Dylan, bench free. Donnarumma, Anderson, Timber, Virgil, Gay, Sarr, Fernandes, Gravenberch, Semenyo, Haaland, Mateta, Sessegnon, Voltemada, Van der Ven. I would probably bench... I'd say Timber this week, reluctantly. Usually I would just start him over Anderson though. I would also bench Sessegnon and Gravenberch. Mateta, Saka, Haaland captain. yeah, I've covered this many times, mate. Haaland for me is number 1. Mbeumo in for Enzo -4. Not for a hit, no. Bench 1 of Timber, Chalobah, Virgil Munoz, Timber. How many of Wolves' squad were off on international duty? I don't know the exact numbers, to be fair. But that is a good question, because with a new manager, if a lot of those players were still there, that will obviously help them build a bit of rapport and chemistry in such limited time. But I wouldn't imagine too many. I'd have to double check that, but I'd say only a handful of players. I mean, Menetzi would have gone. Strand Larsen, I believe, would have gone. João Gomez, Andre, I think at least one of them would have gone with Brazil. But I'll be honest, with a lot of these squads and stuff, I only followed Argentina. So I didn't really, you know, watch a lot of these international games over the last couple of weeks. I took a few days off from football. Hey Dylan, missing 0.1 for Voltemada to Mateta. Same here. Yep. Better move Mukiele to Renildo or Rodon to a 3.9. I mean, they're all kind of sideways, right? I'd probably say Rodon to a 3.9. But then you're probably going to Esteve or something like that. And you've probably got Dubravka as well in your setup anyway. So yeah, from these players, I would bench, I think, Senesi, actually. Ellis Coyle puts his team. Mateta captain. Looks good. You've also got Sarr. And you've got Kelleher in goal. Triple Palace. Looking pretty solid, though. I like it. Saliba and O'Reilly or Timber and Anderson. Already have Virgil, Richards and Esteve. I mean, they're all solid choices, but I would probably go for, I think, Saliba and O'Reilly as a duo. And Dorgu, says Ellis. Okay. I think he'll start this weekend, or on Monday. I don't think he's a great FPL option, though, long term. Start Voltemada or play a defender of Van Dijk, Timber, Richards and Senesi. I'd start Voltemada and bench Timber. Mint or Semenyo? Well, the deadline's closed, but yeah, Semenyo for me. And I've been quite consistent on that as well. I would start Voltemada over Xhaka. Femi says, sorry, Femi. -4 to do either Ndai, Caicedo or Enzo to Mbeumo. I'm using my free in Gameweek 13. I mean, I don't like taking hits like this, but I think Mbeumo is probably worth it in this situation, and I'd probably sell Caicedo, actually, if you can. Caicedo, Ndai and Semenyo bench 1. Caicedo, always a tough call between him and Ndai, but I prefer Semenyo this week anyway. Newcastle missed Burn this game. Haaland surely to capitalise on his absence. The thing is with Burn, though, he can have some poor performances. We saw it against Fulham and also against Brentford, where he was sent off. But yeah, he is a leader at the back and he offers versatility. He is better as a centre-back, but he has played several games at left-back this season. Junaid says bench 3. Bench 3 of them? So basically start 2. Voltemada and I'm going to say Bowen, actually. Yeah. Locked in, let the FPL craziness return. That's one way of saying it. I think that question as well was answered right. It does seem very similar to something I've answered already, but bench 1 of Timber, Chalobah, Virgil, Munoz. Yeah, Timber. Bench boost this game week. Raya, Dubravka, Timber, Chalobah, Senesi, Anderson, Richards, Enzo, Sarr, Gakpo, Semenyo, and Mbeumo. Mateta, Haaland, Joao Pedro. That's a good bench. Good 50-man squad for this week on paper. Yeah, I like the look of it. Captain Chris Richards. Okay, yeah, not for me. But if he does score and get a massive return, then I'll be sure to shout you out. I'm going Brave, starting Enzo for Eze. Yeah, I'd probably do the same thing, but I've got a good feeling about Eze this weekend. I mean, there's a bit of a story there as well, almost joining Tottenham in the summer. But yeah, Enzo Fernandez against Burnley looks appealing on paper. The team locked down, let the chaos begin. Captain Saka says Twisted Parky. Good luck, everyone. Likewise, Genius Gamer and to Safair. I like Minter, but I've said this all stream long. I prefer Semenyo. Yeah, locked in and good luck, Dylan. Likewise, either disaster or masterclass in comeback FPL return. Well, it depends. You know, football. It's not always black and white. Sometimes you get grey, so it could be just a midweek where you barely get a green or a red arrow. In some cases, we call it a grey arrow, but yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Didn't play the bench boost because of the Semenyo start concern, so decided to sell Enzo and Gabriel to Mint and Van Dijk. I like the players you brought in, but I also feel like Enzo could do really well this week, and I think the main issue with him is going to be rotation and whether Chelsea will rest several key players like Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. Senesi first sub. Yeah, the players you brought in are good. Selling Gabriel makes sense, obviously, but I think Enzo might bite you a little bit, but we'll see. If he doesn't start, then I don't think that will be a big concern. Let's talk Vigneault says Captain Salah. Well, look, hopefully he steps up and we finally get something to think about rather than just having Haaland and one premium, always captaining him. I know some people are going a bit different with the captaincy this week, but yeah, that's good to hear if that is the case. I haven't really seen what other people are doing, but hopefully we can get that sort of variety more often, and captaining Haaland will become more of a differential per se, which I'm doing this week anyway. We'll see how it turns out tomorrow. And obviously Haaland plays today in the 5:30 p.m. kickoff at Newcastle. Captain Mateta. Yeah, I like it. He's fifth in my list overall. Hey, Dylan went for Thiago, Haaland and Mateta as my front line. Well, for the last 2 months almost, I've been talking about that as my preferred front three on the wildcards, so I like it, yeah. My points total, 669, Captain Mateta. Looks good. Good luck, Dylan, and everyone else. Likewise to you as well, Simon. Sydney says, I'm on a no-hit strategy for the whole season. Made an early transfer of Ndai to Mbeumo right after the end of Gameweek 11. Once I heard of the Gabriel injury, I just decided to park him on the bench. Well, yeah, something like that will test your commitment to not taking hits. But yeah, if you're going to deploy the strategy, my advice is to not make early transfers in an international break. I know that Ndai to Mbeumo made a lot of sense, but they both featured for their countries. They could pick up injuries, and obviously Gabriel was unfortunate. So yeah, I always recommend to people, even if you want to chase team value and stuff, the best thing to do is have the information. And if you want to avoid hits, the best thing you can do is wait for the information and not make early transfers when you can. Predicted lineup shared on X per CFC news page. Caicedo not in the starting lineup. Yeah, well, I've seen a few lineups flying around. One had Andre Santos over Caicedo. Another one had James playing in the midfield with Gusto at right back. So no one really knows for sure. I think Chelsea might be one of the most difficult to predict this week because they've got Barca and Arsenal over the next week, and Burnley is a good time to rotate. If this game was at home, I would definitely have a few of those players on my bench in my predicted lineup as well. Gabriel and Rangers to Estevan Cunha. Yeah, I've seen a few people talk about buying Cunha. I'm quite surprised by that, to be honest, but look, FPL is about predicting future returns, not just looking at what's happened in the past. And Cunha is one of those players that have underperformed so far this season, who had a good start in terms of performances, but he needs to get some goals and assists under his belt. But yeah, not a big fan of Estev, to be honest, but I understand why he did it. Yeah, no worries, Awale. I appreciate you messaging a few times anyway, so don't worry about it. Captaining Mateta, because I forgot to change it to Haaland. Well, yeah, Mateta's still ranked very highly in my captaincy list. I think Haaland's the best one, even against Newcastle away. What's your preferred front line going forwards? What you said, Ian. Basically that. There is a debate for those that wildcarded in 12 or were building a front line now to go for Welbeck over Thiago. But yeah, if I'm wildcarding in 13, for example, which is a possibility, I'm also looking at the free hit. Yeah, I think Igor Thiago does make it against Burnley at home, to be fair. And both Haaland and Mateta speak for themselves. So that is the optimal front three, and it has been for a while now. I parked Gabriel as well to not take a hit, but selling him later today to avoid additional price drops. I mean, that's fair enough. I've also made early transfers this season and over the years. I just usually wait if possible, especially in UCL Fantasy, where I pretty much always wait until the deadline stream to lock in my final moves. But yeah, I think with Gabriel, he went down in price already to 6.5. I don't think he'll go down again. So my advice is to maybe hold out until tomorrow. The only issue with that is your desired replacement could go up in price in that time frame, but it's unlikely. For example, Van Dijk, who is a very popular Gabriel replacement, also went up in price yesterday to 6 million. So I'd maybe hold out until at least tomorrow. before making that move. Salah captaincy Hall incoming. We shall see. Is Ahmad a good differential? He could play at wing back again. That's the main issue with him. But yeah, with Amad Diallo, he's got potential. He's 23 years old. He has those moments like the hat-trick against Southampton last year where you can see what he's about. Also scoring against Man City. But I'll be honest, at the moment, I'd probably say no. I don't think he's a great differential, nor is he, let's say, a good one. But that could well change, of course, with United's upcoming fixtures. Well, hopefully not easy. I'm telling you now, if you're giving me the kind of two options, and I know you didn't, I'm just saying this myself, of Haaland blanking and I get a red arrow, or was it so Haaland blanking, City losing, and I get a red arrow? I'll take that. Instead of green arrow, City win, and Haaland hat-trick. Yeah, I'd take the red arrow all day long in that case. So, yeah, when it comes to that, football versus FPL, my priority will lie with football, especially when it comes to this title race. So we'll see how it all pans out as well. But the Chelsea-Burnley lineup will be out in the next 6 minutes, but I'll be honest with you, I'm going to take a little break. My voice has been struggling for a while now, and the plan is to do a reaction stream. Hopefully tonight. I'll keep you updated in due course. If not, it will be tomorrow. But yeah, I think doing a reaction stream after the Newcastle City game might be on the cards, and we can talk about how the Saturday games have gone. Okay, so before I go, and this will probably lead me to going through the bloody lineups as usual, these are my scoreline predictions, and I'll also go through FPL Challenge, and also show you a few different bits and bobs here and there. So I will have the Chelsea-Burnley lineups ready, answer a few last questions and comments, and then wrap things up. But yeah, I'll be honest, if I do see like Sanchez rotated and Joao Pedro, then yeah, I'm going to regret not wildcarding because both of them would have been sold. So that's the only way I can see myself really regretting yeah, not wildcarding this week. Otherwise, I'd be quite happy, even if it doesn't go well in terms of the points. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to tempt my fate and say, I don't see a massive difference, a massive swing, because that can always happen in FPL when you least expect it. But yeah, we'll see how it happens. In 4 minutes, we'll know Chelsea's lineup, which will be of great interest for those of Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, Joao Pedro, etc. Okay. Let me now go to FPL Challenge. So I've got Sanchez in goal against Burnley away, Van Dijk, Mbeumo captain, Rice, Nico Gonzalez, and Mateta. So I've got 2 players, arguably even 3 with Van Dijk, who are mainly in there because they will get 6+ points if they kind of retain their average 90% pass success rate and attempting at least 30 passes. So that's why they're in there. Newcastle, the 3rd lowest XGA. Haaland will be in Chow's back pocket. Yeah, but they're still 14th in the Premier League table. Haaland is top for XG, for goals scored. Man City have the most goals scored overall, so you can look at it both ways, right? And if you look at Newcastle against City, yeah, the record is quite imbalanced. I mean, City generally win against them, even at St James's Park. Good luck, everyone. Let the show begin. I just hope the winning streak will continue for Man United. Not to be a dick or a twat, but United did draw, actually, the last couple of games, right? Against Forest and Tottenham. But I see what you're saying. I mean, it is definitely an improvement on what we saw before. But, yeah. Unfortunately, your winning streak is at 0. I'm just saying. I'm ready to have a suboptimal team in some game weeks. I took so many unnecessary hits and benched so many points last season. Yeah, but sometimes you make a good decision on paper and it just doesn't turn out the way you expect, or, you have a bit of misfortune against you. That's just the nature of FPL and the business we're in. So, yeah, we're going to have to see. But I haven't taken too many hits this season, and even in the last campaign, I was quite cautious when it came to that. But yeah, sometimes there were just some massive swings, and it kind of hit you when you least expected it, at least in my case. So 1, Gakpo, Semenyo, Saka, Sarr, 2, Bruno, King, Semenyo, Enzo, Saka. So Saka's in both situations. The same goes for Semenyo. So basically your question is Gakpo, Sarr, or Bruno, King, Enzo. I'm going to go for number 1, but I don't think Gakpo's a long-term solution. Sydney says, this season I'm taking no hits and having a very cheap bench. I bench Gabriel for Mukiele, and my other bench players are Goodmanson and Guiu. Yeah, if I didn't buy in Van Dijk, I would have just started Renilo Mandava, so quite similar to what you're doing there with Mukiele, and that could still work in your favour, actually. There aren't too many standout defenders to replace Gabriel. I think Timber, Munoz, maybe other Palace defenders like Gay, and Virgil van Dijk. Yeah, those are the ones to really replace him. Haaland just scored 2 goals against Italy. What can Newcastle defenders do against him? Yeah, but this is not Italy of, 2006 when they won the World Cup, when they had, some of the best teams of all time in the 90s and before that in the 80s. Yeah, this is an Italy side that struggled to qualify for World Cups. So, look, Haaland can score against anybody. I think the biggest thing he's done this season is score against Arsenal from open play. Before the Sunderland game, no one had done that. So, yeah, for me, I don't really care what he did in the international break, because Italy, unfortunately, aren't that good nowadays. Went with Voltemada to Mateta, Gabriel to Richards, and Ndiaye to Gakpo. Yeah, look, Gakpo's a short-term punt. Until Wirtz comes back, that could work fairly well, but I think long-term Ndiaye is better. Yeah, Mateta in for Voltemada. I like the big German. I not Per Mertesacker, but yeah, I like Nick Voltemada. I think Mateta's an upgrade there. And then Gabriel to Richards makes sense. So overall, good transfers, but I would probably sell Gakpo in a couple of weeks. Okay, so the lineup should be out now. Let's refresh the page as well. Let's go through Burnley's starting 11. No, they don't have the lineup already. Okay, that's nice. That's awkward. In the meantime, I'll show you the projected price changes and see when they're going to put their lineup. But it should be in the next few seconds, actually. Yep, literally they posted it a few seconds after. You bloody twats. So, let's now go back to their page and refresh. So Dubravka, Walker, Hartman, Estev, Twansebi, Ogachuku, Anthony, Florentino, Chiwana, Fleming, and Cullen. So essentially, the predicted lineup I showed you yesterday was exactly spot on. They have gone for a 4-2-3-1 this time. They're not going for the back 5 with Laurent. So yeah, that is how they're lining up. Chiwana does start over Laurent. And let's go to Chelsea. Let's see what they've gone for. I think I just saw it there. No, that's just irrelevant. They still haven't posted that lineup. Oh dear, we've got a bit of madness coming. Yeah, well, Chelsea we're still waiting on. They should have posted it by now. So yeah, very soon we'll go through that. I'll keep the Burnley lineup for a little while longer. And we'll see what you lot think. But not really much to comment on for Burnley. A lot of us would have benched these assets or not even gone near them in the first place. And I'm still waiting for Chelsea. What are they doing? I'm also going to have a look at Flash Score. They usually have the lineups a little bit early as well. Yeah, they don't have them either, so... Yeah, no, Chelsea still don't have it. So if you want to wait around and see what they're going for, we've got to wait a little bit longer. This is kind of a madness there. So for those that haven't done so already, drop a like and subscribe. It would be appreciated. Caicedo is benched, apparently, according to Syndra. In a lot of the questions I was asked today, I recommended actually benching him in your FPL team. So I'm not completely surprised if he is benched. But I am surprised by Chelsea taking so long with this lineup. So let me see where they're saying Caicedo's benched. Yeah, I don't see anything myself, to be honest, but yeah, that could be the main bit of news from the early lineups. I just hope João Pedro and Sanchez start. That's all I'm really asking for. Okay. There is this. I mean, let me just go. It's posted by Chelsea Dodgers. Fuck. Okay, so they've gone for Sanchez, James Tosin, Chalobah, Cucurella, Andre Santos, Fernandez, Pedro Neto, João Pedro, Gittins, and Delap. So I've got a 9 correct for Chelsea. Yeah, the ones I got wrong were Andre Santos in for Caicedo and Gittins for Garnacho. The rest was spot on. So yeah, and for Burnley, of course, like I said, I did predict their 11 yesterday in that lineup video with a 4-2-3-1. So not too shabby with the original predictions for the early kickoffs, if this is to be believed. Let's see if I can just get you the official one so you don't question the source. Yeah, because Chelsea still haven't posted it. What the fuck? But yeah, looks like Caicedo's benched, and at least my Chelsea assets start. So can't really complain too much. Hopefully João Pedro gets more than 60 minutes, which I think he will. Yeah, Delap up front, Enzo and Pedro start. Yeah, thank you for that. Well, I checked Flash Score. They didn't have it still. They only showed predicted lineups. Dang, I'm late to the stream. Subscribe to FPL Dylan. Thank you very much. And no worries about being late. You could just say it's early. Depends on when you want to tune in. You're only planning on keeping Gakpo for max 3 game weeks? Yeah, I don't see him lasting longer than that. Maybe even before the 3 game week threshold, you're looking to sell him. Yesterday we had a quarrel with my colleague at work. He is a Chelsea fan. We had back and forth about who will finish above the other this season. Well, there is a debate. I think going into the campaign, most people would have preferred Chelsea or backed them. It just depends, because United have a big advantage of not being in the Carabao Cup or any European competition, and Chelsea can't do what they did last year of rotating in the Conference League until the semi-finals and final. And yeah, in the Champions League, if they do that, they'll obviously be knocked out. So it's Barcelona in a couple of days' time. That's why they're rotating a lot. Caicedo, who started 38 Premier League games last season, he's already been benched in 2 in this campaign. So they have to adapt, and yeah, it won't be easy. I mean, for sure, Chelsea will be closer to United than they will be to the, well, maybe not Liverpool. I mean, they're not looking too good at the moment. Things can change. But yeah, Chelsea compared to City and Arsenal, yeah, they're not going to be in that level, in my opinion. Just Parky says Burnley 0, Chelsea 1, Bournemouth 1, West Ham 1, Brighton, Brentford, same result. Fulham 0, Sunderland 2, Liverpool 2, Nottingham Forest 0, Wolves 0, Palace 0, Newcastle 1, City 2, Leeds 1, Villa 1, Arsenal 2, Spurs 0, and United 2, Everton 1. So similar predictions, just a few scoreline changes. Like I went for 1-0 United, 3-1 Arsenal. We had the same result for the Villa Leeds United game. I went for 3-2 City. Yeah, 2-0 Palace. I went for 2-1. Same result for Liverpool. Interesting that you went for a Sunderland 2-0. I went for 1-1, I think. And then Brighton Brentford, I went for 2-2. So interesting stuff there. Bournemouth have struggled against West Ham, actually, but I have backed them to win. The Cherries are now down to 9th in the Premier League table. And then, yeah, Burnley 0, Chelsea 1. Interesting. I mean, I wouldn't mind a clean sheet for Chelsea in terms of my FPL prospects with Robert Sanchez in goal, but otherwise, come on, Burnley, score a goal or 2. So the last thing I'm going to show you is FPL Challenge. I mean, I did go through this already in my team selection and a few times today. This is not fully locked in. I mean, Nico Gonzalez, what is he doing here? It's just because of the challenge this week in possession. So if a player gets 90% pass completion or above, and they attempt 30 passes, they'll get 6 additional points, which is why Gonzalez and Rice are in this team. And I've also got Van Dijk, who typically does that as well. Mbeumo's my captain, though, and Mateta is up front. Sanchez between the sticks. So we'll see how that all pays off in the end. But yeah, that is pretty much it for the Gameweek 12 deadline stream. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in for the last couple of hours. If you enjoyed it or found insightful, then like this stream. Let's get it to 150. Subscribe to the channel and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date on my content, both FPL and UCL Fantasy. Keep your eyes peeled for Matchday 5 content. I'll be recording the best Limitless and Wildcard squads very soon. The team selection will be out on Monday, and the deadline stream, of course, will be on Tuesday around 2 to 3 hours before the official deadline at 5:45 p.m. in the UK. And for FPL, there'll be plenty more content where that came from. So going into Gameweek 13, there'll be a reaction stream, a transfer tips, my team selection, the best wildcard squad, and much more. There might even be a best free hit team, because that could be a great time to deploy that chip. And if you want to see more predicted lineups videos, then let me know as well in the comment section, and also by showing support to the channel. Let's build all my social media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can find me by typing FPL Dylan or Dylan RCM. There's my Discord server where you get all the updates as well for my content for FPL UCL Fantasy with the fixtures, injuries, you name it. There's also my FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues and my Spotify. So thank you to those that have supported the channel. I'll see you very soon. And a big up, of course, to Paredes and to the new members, of course. And in early December, I'll be gifting 10 memberships myself. You'll get early access to my videos, prior to comments, amongst many other perks. And you can still sign up by going to patreon.com/FPL Dylan or clicking the join button on YouTube. I'll see you very soon, potentially tonight, for a reaction stream. Take care, enjoy the football, and I wish you all the best of luck for Gameweek 12.